flag salute, I'm sorry.
Our Father in heaven, as we gather here today, let us give thanks to you for the blessings you bestow on us, the great blessing of our nation, of our state, of our county, and our community. And Lord, let us, especially this time of year, be mindful of the greatest gift ever given to mankind, that being your Son and the sacrifice he made on the cross for us. Today, Lord, I raise up to you our commissioners. Give them wisdom. Give them your guidance and your blessing on all the business that is conducted here today. Lord, I offer this prayer in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry, I had another pastor that was supposed to be here, and I was looking around to see if they were there. Got delayed. So anyway, we'll call the meeting to order, and Tina, administrator.
Okay. I have the minutes of December 3rd.
Okay, got the minutes of December 3rd. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd as written.
I'll go ahead and second them. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. We do have some change orders. There were a few that didn't get signed last week that were the previous years. They were behind the report, and then another batch for current.
Okay. Quite a few of them.
And Randy did call, and he said he was going to be about 15 to 20 minutes late. So.
Okay. sign checks for the meal for the Christmas party at $1,235.
We have the club license for the Marion Country Club, and so that is approved by motion and vote, and then we do the certificate.
Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion to go ahead and approve the Kansas Alcohol Beverage Control Division liquor license for Marion County Country Club in Marion County, Kansas. Do I have a second? By Kent, all in favor say aye. Aye. Right here on the certificate, right there.
Yeah, there should
Don't
be a
have to
line.
undo it.
Yep.
There you go.
Thank you. You might remember a week or two ago I had mentioned that there's a group that is wanting to quote health insurance, like a partially self-funded plan, and they're wanting to bundle together several different companies in Marion County, and they would like to quote the county as well. And for that bundle to go to their underwriter, they need everyone to basically commit to allowing a bid to be done. So before I give them permission, they want a letter basically, and I wanted to bring that to you to make sure that actually I made the letter from you all instead of me. So
Okay.
that'll be your decision.
Okay, so it says Marion County, Kansas agrees to provide CPM the information requested to quote employees' health insurance for the Marion County KS bundle. The information will be provided to CPM 90 days prior to our renewal date of May 1st, 2019, and will reflect our 108 employees. So I would certainly approve that.
Need a motion or anything?
No.
Okay.
I'll sign it. Okay.
You have salary sheets for 2 new employees.
Okay, so this is a part-time paramedic, Curtis Oslin, at $15 an hour. And Nicholas Wortham at $17 an hour. This is Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coordinator.
And I did work on a request for proposals for the audit, and I sent that out to you all. Would like to get that sent out
Looks good.
fairly soon.
Okay. Actually, instead of putting this out for fiscal years December 2018, 19, and 20, can we put something in there for a 1 year with an option to renew for 2?
This one, it would be looking for a bid for 3 year, but with the county having the option to renew each year.
Okay.
We
so,
could do it the other way, but I
So it would still give us the option
Mhm.
to continue or not to continue.
Yes.
Okay. And then I would also like to see on the proposal timeline, I don't see an actual bid opening date. And with the proposals being put in, I said, oh, I would like to have a bid opening date to where we can open the bids here in the commission.
That would be,
You said proposals are due, and then a review period of 14th to the 18th.
Right.
So what day would be the
the
bid
14th.
opening? Okay, so the 14th would be the actual bid opening
That's when
date.
they would be opened, and then we would have a period to review them to make sure that everything is.
Okay,
Yes,
so
good.
I just want to clarify, because you do have a review period, January 14th
Right.
to 18th, so it doesn't necessarily just say bid openings when they come out. On
Okay.
the January 14th, they'll say bid opening on the commission calendar that day.
Yes.
Okay, just want to clarify that. And that's all the comments that I have, otherwise I'm okay with it.
Okay. I can change it to a 1 year. I just think that you're probably gonna get a little bit better
Yeah.
quotes if they have the opportunity for,
Option.
know that they're gonna be coming back for
Options,
3
yeah,
years.
Options always
Okay.
better.
Options are always better, yes. Yeah.
You have been getting that Hobbers report every year. We renew that subscription and you get that. I wondered if you're looking at it, if you still want to renew it. It's $200 for the year. So,
I personally don't have time to read it. I don't read it
okay.
myself.
I've read it, but, there's some good legislative type information in it, but we get a lot of legislative type information anyway.
Okay. So let it pass at this time.
Fine.
Okay. Okay. And I believe that is all that I have for administrative.
Okay. I do have a couple of things for administrative that I would like to address. I have an appointment to make, and I'm going to do that at this time for the planning and zoning. So I have an appointment to replace Jeff Bina, who has served several years, and I would thank him for his many, many years of service. But at this time, I'm going to go ahead and nominate Mr. Dwayne Bear, and he's a retired professional engineer.
Can you spell that, please?
Yes, B-U-A-N-E, D, middle initial, Bair, B-A-I-R. He is a retired professional engineer with broad experience in healthcare, consulting, inventory control, manufacturing, bids, proposals, and legal aspects faced with organizations. And he's lived in Marion County since 2011. So I would go ahead and recommend that he be approved to represent Second District in planning and zoning. So we would need to bring that to a vote. So I'll make that motion to appoint Mr. Dwayne Bear. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent. All in favor say aye.
Did you vote?
Aye. And the second thing that I'd like to bring up is we had discussed several times over the past 2 years about having professional management in the county. And so, talking to a lot of people, thinking about everything that's happened over the past year, the direction that the county is going into has created a lot of concern for me. So, in talking to the constituents and the people throughout the county, it seems to me as though it is absolutely necessary that we take the initiative to hire a county administrator. Mr. Becker, you made a special point to have that monies included in the 2019 budget. I'm assuming that that means that you might agree with that perspective that I'm taking here.
I think we budgeted for two years now.
Mhm.
Last year, we had to divert those funds to another project, but I believe going forward, the county does need to have an administrator.
I agree. And so at this time, I am prepared to go ahead and make the motion to approve a resolution to create the position and hire a county administrator under the supervision and direction of the Board of County Commissioners, utilizing a National Professional Recruitment Association for this process, under the authority afforded to the Board of County Commissioners, KSA 19-101A, Home Rule, and 19-3A02, 19-3A03, and 19-3A04, Office of County Administrator. Do I have a second?
Couple of questions.
Yes.
Has that been by our council?
Yes, I had talked to Mr. Jansen. Mr. Jansen, sorry, yes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 You have any discussion?
We have discussed it many, many times, but you may go
You
ahead.
didn't
I'm gonna
discuss
go
it,
ahead.
you didn't discuss it this time.
Would you like to say something, Mr. Lofty? Go ahead. We have a motion on the floor in a second, so you may go ahead and say what you'd like to say.
Okay. Just, it's very sad that we go against the will of the public, and we voted on it, and the public said no, so sad that we go against the will of the public for Marion County, and so,
Is that all you have?
no, that's it.
Okay. You voted yes. You voted?
We haven't
You
voted
haven't
yet.
voted.
Okay, I thought it.
You
Okay.
haven't called
But
for
I
a
went
vote.
ahead and answered his question, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Mr. Duffy is opposed.
Okay, may I have a copy of your motion?
Yes,
Because
and I would like it
didn't
to
write
be
all of
exact,
that.
and I added some writing on it. So I would like it in the minutes, exactly as I stated.
The, I believe the next step, but you can verify with Brad, you will have to pass a resolution.
Okay, I think I put, yeah, okay, and I put in the motion to approve the resolution.
Yeah, but there is no resolution yet.
Right, but
So,
we will have a resolution, so.
right, okay. Just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Okay.
Create a resolution.
Yeah,
Yes.
you will, the official action will
Right,
occur when you pass the resolution.
right.
Let's see. I think I have, well, I have one other thing, but I'll do that later when Brad gets here, so, that's all I have for administrative. Next is McGrath. Good morning.
Good morning.
You may take the hot seat.
Thank
You're
you.
gonna be our speaker.
Can I move this? I was going to, thank you. I don't want to be in your way here. We've got cords coming. Thank you. Is this going to be okay? I think so. Good morning. Thank you for having us again on what is going to be our final site visit and final presentation for the classification and compensation study that McGrath has conducted for Marion County. What I'd like to do, I think we're going to put this into, let's see, where's your mouse? Slideshow show. There you go. Did you get it? There you go. I got it, thank you. Great. What I'd like to do, I know we've got about 45 minutes, and we'll probably take a lot of that time. I do have final documents for you. I know that we were working with some drafts, but so I will leave those with everybody here today so that you've got the actual final reports and the final documents. Some minor changes, mostly in title, although we added a couple of different titles, moved one around from the draft to the final. But after today, you'll have the opportunity to actually, dig in a little bit more on that. The purpose of today is for me to really just summarize the entire project and to provide the final recommendation to you. There was a question of whether or not we were going to be asking the body to take action on this particular product, and that is not what our role is necessarily. What we're here to do today is to present our final findings and recommendations for you, give you the tools then so that you as a body can take that and make your decisions what you need to do, because you might have a lot of financial decisions and a lot of discussions that you need to have over the course of the next couple of months, knowing then that when you get to that point, you need to give us a call. We'll certainly be available to you when you're at that point, when you need to start, when you're starting to make some decisions on this particular project. So hopefully I can maneuver this okay. Just want to do a quick summary. Most of this is something that you have seen before in one of the first, I've been here, this is my third time to see you, and so a lot of this is going to be reviewed, but just so that we're all on the same page. McGrath was asked to come in here by Marion County to take a look at your current compensation model and to evaluate that model against the external market and also what was going on internally within your organization. And to take that information and to develop a new system for you. And that new system then, there was an intent for it to be fair, equitable, competitive with the market, and easy to administer. And making sure that we've got a mechanism for employees to move through the model, address if there's any issues with the current system, such as compression, or there may be other areas, and then also to give you some recommendations on how to use the tool. What are the policies that you can use then to make sure that your compensation system runs effectively? I'm going to skip over some of this because we've talked about it before, but again, a quick summary. This project has not been done in a silo. There has been a lot of meetings and communications that have gone on with various parties. We have had individual meetings with the commission at the onset of the project just to get your feel of the project. We also met with every department head here, so that we understood what their programs and services, what their positions are. We evaluated your written documents, your current system, your policies, your job descriptions, and then we engaged the employees. We asked them to complete a position questionnaire, and we actually had meetings with them as well. From there then, we evaluated. We requested information from 27 different organizations, and the list of those organizations is in the final report, and we asked for information on about 84 different job titles. Once we developed that schedule then, we met again with the department directors, and we allowed them the opportunity to take a look at that draft and give us feedback, and then also we did that with the commission. So you have seen the draft, you have the opportunity to provide feedback, and I did get some feedback from the members, and that feedback has then been incorporated into the final product. So this is my third time with you, and so again, a lot of this is summary, it's repeat. You've heard this before, but I'm really trying to make sure that we're all on the same page when we get into the final. So to take a step back, your current system is 10 pay bands, and it's a step system. Your employees step at 6 months, at 1 year, and then at 5-year increments thereafter. And you have a very narrow range. You've got 22% of a range that it takes, in theory, 45 years for your employees to get through, because those steps are 5-year steps. And one of the things that we talked about was that's a really long period of time to get through a very narrow band, and that's something that we don't usually see. That's a little bit unusual in compensation within the public sector. Your steps are between 2 down to 1.5%. And there is some movement that can occur. It occurs one of two ways. Number one would be that your department head is going to request a merit increase to the commission each year, and then that goes through the budget process. And then you also have a longevity benchmark, which is at once every 5 years. And that longevity benchmark, then, if they hit that benchmark and they're not earning at least that wage, then they can get bumped up to that new longevity benchmark. But if by merit they are earning above that, nothing more comes of it. And so there's a little bit of a blending that's happening between your longevity and your merit program. You do have a couple of positions here that are a very smaller range, and that is within your ambulance department, because there's only 3 steps. And then of course your elected officials and your part-time are only one salary. And so you've got a number of different compensation systems that are currently at play here. So one of the things that we did was we took a look at your compression. Compression is really the difference between your superior and your subordinate positions, to make sure that you've got a substantial or enough difference between those positions. Usually compression will occur, number one, because of overtime, but number two, it might be because they're just simply on the salary schedule too close to each other. Marion County is very conservative when it comes to your overtime, and so your compression issue wasn't necessarily because of that, because you very much limit your overtime. More because there's not enough of a difference between some of your positions. So whereas you had compression, it wasn't non-existent, it wasn't an overly concerning issue. In a couple of departments, we had to make some accommodations for that. But then, and again, this is something that you heard from my first visit, the other thing that we do then is we take a look at what your market is telling us. And when I'm giving you percentages, we're saying acceptable range is generally 40 to 60%, market is 50%. Market is right smack dab down the middle. So where does your salary system look like right now in comparisons to the market, the other 27 organizations that we collected information on? And overall, your minimums are you got about half of your positions that are below, and then you've got about half of your positions where their minimums are okay. Now, of those half that are below, you've got about 22% that we would consider at risk. They're just on the bubble. We need to watch those really closely. So that tells us not all of your positions are necessarily off, all right, but you've got about half of them where your minimums are maybe just a little bit too low in comparisons to the competitive market. More importantly, though, what you have is your market. Your market is what we consider your market is what you're actually paying your wages of your employees to the actual wages being paid by the comparable organizations. And that is, the number is a little bit more concerning in that you've got about 65% of your positions that are below market, and you've got another 21% that are on the verge. So in essence, you've got about 85% of your positions where they're not as competitive in the market as they should be. And then we have to dive in a little bit deeper and ask the question of, well, why is that happening? I suspect part of it is because it takes you 45 years to get through that range. It's taking a long time. So the steps are they're small and they're slow coming. And so that's part of it. But the other thing that we take a look at then is also the tenure of your organization. If you have a lot of turnover, you have a lot of new employees, for example, they might be under the market because they just haven't had the time to progress through. And that was, we'll come back to that here. Actually, I will do it right now. I'll come back to the maximum. Your tenure here is just under 6 years. Average is about 8. And so what that's telling me is that you're not retaining employees long term, and so they're not progressing through that schedule as fast as we would like to see, and they're not getting up to that competitive market. But the other thing that's telling me, if you look at the graph on the screen here, your age band, the years of service according to your age, if you see individuals who are age 50 and over, that's a lot of years of service that are there. And what that's telling me is that when you start having turnover, you're gonna start losing your institutional knowledge, because these are the people who've been here for a really long time. They're not gonna work forever. People wanna retire, right? They wanna go have fun and enjoy that retirement. And so over the course of the next decade or so, you should be expecting that you're going to continue to lose personnel just purely because of that retirement factor. And so when I evaluated your employees by age group, you'll see that about 60% of your employees are age 40 and older. And so you're going to consistently see a turnover because of that, because people are going to be wanting to get ready to retire. So your younger personnel have less tenure here. And so that is, part of the reason why you're seeing that maybe your market is a little bit lower, because people haven't been here necessarily long enough to progress through the model, on top of the fact that it's taking you so long to get through the model because you're on 5-year incremental steps. The other thing that I took a look at here, and this is something that's relatively new to you, although you saw it in the final report, is the maximum. I did a review of your maximum rates that your employees can earn. And right now you've got about 12% of your benchmark positions that have individuals at the top rate, which means they're still working to get through that system. Of that 12%, half of your positions that are there, they are the ones that only have 3 steps. That's in your ambulance department. They're they've got 3 steps. They're maxing out after about a year. The other half are people who have negotiated their increases when they have come to the county. And what's happening is when you're negotiating on an individual basis, then, and it's not necessarily, I don't want to say that you shouldn't be doing that, but what you're identifying is on a case-by-case basis that you need to be paying a little bit more of a competitive wage, and so you're creating a little bit of a dichotomy that you've got some employees that are further up on the range because you're identifying that on a case-by-case basis. Yet your overall system that you have in place right now isn't matching that, because you're not changing your ranges to match what's happening in the market. So that's why you have a few individuals who are at the top of the range, whereas the majority of your employees, they're just sitting right on that salary schedule. The other thing that you have is longevity. And right now, your longevity program is awarding time in position, not time with the county. That is unusual. Most longevity programs that you find will find it with the organization, not in the position. And so what will happen is you've got an employee, we talked about this at my first site visit, you have an employee who will maybe earn some merit increases, and by the time they can be awarded a longevity, they're earning more than what the longevity allows for, so they don't receive anything. And then you'll have some other employees who maybe they are not the merit performers, but then when they hit their longevity benchmark, they will be increased because of that longevity. So they're going to earn the wage one way or the other. And there was a lot of feedback from your employees on that. The program that you currently have in place is not necessarily a positive thing for your employees for that reason. Plus the fact that you're not awarding them by time with the county, but with the position. So as an employee is promoting up, their longevity date resets. And you have employees that are almost not wanting to promote up. They want to promote up, but yet if they promote up, then they're going to lose out on that longevity bonus. And so, they're really torn between what it is that they should be doing for themselves. So overall, here's what we found. And again, this is summary for you. Your salary schedule is short, given the amount of time that it takes to get a person through it. 22% over 45 years is really unusual. You are using longevity, which is also substituted for merit. It's not really clear-cut lines what's what. You have limited movement for the employees to progress through the market rates. You've got some minimums that need to be adjusted. You've got market rates that need to be adjusted. Your tenure is declining. You should expect that that's going to continue to be, given you've got people who are going to be aging out and they want to retire. You've got a little bit of compression that's present. And again, that's not because of overtime, but it's more so where the positions are placed on the current salary schedule. So overall, that is your issue. So what we did was, and again, you know this because you've seen a copy of the salary schedule. We created 2 new salary schedules. One is for general employees that have full-time, part-time, and seasonal. And then the other one is for your elected officials who serve in a department head capacity. And we developed a very similar system to what you have right now. It's a 12-step system in which you have 2% down to 1.5% steps. As you progress over time, your increase goes down. But those steps are now annual. They're not 6 months and then 1 year and 5 year after. They're annual because the intent is that you've got to get your employees progressing through. They need to be receiving these increases so that the cost of living around them is going up, but their wages aren't going up, and they're having a hard time being able to make ends meet. And what's happening is that you're not as competitive. You're running the risk that you're going to lose your people to other organizations. But the other thing that we did, and this is something new from the last time that I was here with you in September, but you've seen in the final report, is we created a medical range for pay grades M through P. And there is a true issue going on in the market where you've got some medical positions that the range, very narrow range that we have, is not going to be effective for your recruitment and retention. The medical world, they're willing to pay those rates of pay. And so I developed an additional range at the tail end of your salary schedule for you. I believe it's an extra 15%, so that if you need that range to be able to, obviously it's going to be in a negotiation, to be able to recruit and retain those medical personnel, you're able to do that in the future. And that is purely because of what's happening in your market right now. You are likely going to struggle getting your medical staff here given the range that's in place. All right, so the other item that we have is the implementation, because we know that this could be very costly for you. And so when we were here on our second presentation to you, we introduced the concept of temporary minimum rates, because you've got a number of employees that they are going to be at that minimum based on how we're placing on the salary schedule, and we'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. And so what we've done is we've created two options. One is a 3-step temporary minimum option, and the other one is a 2-step temporary option. And these temporary minimums, they really are intended to be short-term for the implementation, all right? And so when you have those, then if that is an implementation strategy that the county feels that they need to use financially, you might decide you need to do that, which is completely fine. You just got to know that long-term, that area, that temporary area, it's not intended to be there long-term. So once employees are progressed through that green zone, then those lanes are intended to drop, okay? But just know that that's why we have that recommendation. It's because we know that you financially might need to utilize that as an implementation strategy. You will also find, and again, you've seen this because you've seen the draft report already, is that we've got some job classification or job titles that have changed. We have, we've taken a close look at your positions and how maybe job titles can be clustered together. Maybe we've got some progression 1, 2s, 3s, 4s based on new certifications or level of work, that type of thing. And so you'll find that we have changed some of the job titles, and that is to better align with the market. It's also to better align with maybe the responsibilities that that particular position has. And again, you'll find that we've got some, level 1, 2s, and 3s in there based upon, perhaps like a certification that's necessary in certain departments. And longevity. Longevity, with this, you'll see, and you saw in your draft document, that we don't have longevity in the recommended salary schedule. That is something that we are recommending that you absolutely separate from compensation. Your compensation system is that, your longevity is simply an added benefit, but it really should not be intermixed. My primary recommendation right now is the focus for the county should be to make sure that your employees are receiving competitive, meaningful wages. And as a result then, longevity, until you can get everyone onto a permanent salary schedule, longevity should not be your priority. It's hard to pay people longevity when you've got other employees that are not even at a marketable wage. And so the priority should be getting everyone onto that permanent salary schedule. After that, once that happens, and I would say, if you're going to go through a phased-in implementation, that could be 2 or 3 years from now. At that point, then, you could reintroduce a longevity component, but not on your salary schedule. Longevity can be something so simple as to say, years of service with the county gives you an extra percentage bonus that you pay them. And that bonus can come annual. It could come every 5 years. It could, you can develop however you'd like to do it, but it really should not be tied to the compensation system, because the compensation system is intended to pay individuals for the work that they do. And there was discussions about you want to make sure that there's that performance component that goes with it, and you can still do that with a step schedule. All right, you can, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But longevity has really nothing to do with the performance per se. It has everything to do with thank you very much for being here and being our employee. And so I recommend that you keep those separate. So with that then, with your new salary schedule, and you've seen, again, you've seen the draft of that, we've got some policy recommendations, and this is something that's relatively new for you, although you've seen it in the report draft that you've read. The first thing that we are recommending for you is that your salary schedule, your overall document itself, should be adjusted on an annual basis, and that is what is typically considered the cost of living adjustment. There is an economic indicator that you utilize when you are making that determination of what that cost of living adjustment should be each year. Because the cost of milk goes up, the cost of gas goes up, the cost of bread goes up each year, then with that, with your cost of living, your salary schedule also needs to be adjusted. Our recommendation is that you do that once a year. And I'm just going to throw this out. You are doing budget in July-ish time frame, right? August. And so you can be taking a look at, that can be the time of year when you're saying, all right, if we're going to make a salary schedule adjustment, You know, you make that decision in July of that year, that it can be implemented or incorporated into your budget, that then you're going to apply to the salary schedule on 1/1, okay? So employees that will receive that bump because it's the whole schedule itself is going up, and so they receive that bump on 1/1. Separately from that, on the second notation there, is your step increases. The step increases don't need to happen at the same time. They can happen at a staggered date, and I, for the purposes of an example, would say July 1st. Then all of your employees go through the evaluation process all at the same time, and then you get that nice listing once a year of these are the people who are going to qualify for the step increase. You can still have a performance-based increase, even with a step model. And it's very simple in that if you're doing your job, if you're meeting the expectations of your department head, you get the step. If you're not meeting those expectations, if you are sub-performing, if you're on a performance improvement plan, you don't get the step. And so you can still utilize this tool as a performance tool. It's just in a little bit more simpler form than what you're currently used to, all right? So employees then would see 2 increases a year. One is that cost of living adjustment because the salary schedule is adjusting. The other one is based on their performance. Overall, between the two of them, this is what's really kind of important, is that you should be following what that cost of living really is for the employee. Because this is going to be a question I'm sure that's going to come up, and so we're just going to try to answer it right now. For example, over the weekend I pulled up to see what the current CPI is. The CPI right now that came out in October is 2.5%. That means your cost of living, your average cost of living has gone up 2.5%, although your energy has gone up, of that, energy's like at about 8%, but it's a combined average. And so if you're looking at, and during your budget time, if you're looking at your, CPI is going up 2.5%, what should we be doing to your salary schedule? One of the things that you can keep in mind is that you've got employees that are going to get partial of that on a step increase. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to increase your entire schedule by 2.5%. But you have to be cognizant of, if it's a 2.5% CPI that's occurring, people are going to be getting 1.5%, 2% step increases. What should we be doing on that overall salary schedule? Can we put 0.5%? Can we put 1%? So that we're looking at it from a total picture perspective for your employees. Does that make sense? Okay. The other policy recommendations that we have in your final report are promotions and demotions, and also temporary assignments. Promotions are something that the county has valued very heavily here, that you have looked at on a promotional opportunity. When that comes up, are there individuals from within that might qualify for that position? And so when you do that, along with temporary assignments, it's incredibly important from an HR perspective that you're utilizing the same methodology, the same rules for every scenario that you come across. When you start to individually negotiate, suddenly then you run the risk that your inconsistency could be a liability to you. It wouldn't be something that you would do on purpose. Of course not. You wouldn't do that. But if you have rules in place where you say a promotion is worth a minimum of 5%, or a promotion is going to be worth, we're going to give you a minimum of 10% increase, and you follow that rule then, and you consistently apply it, then there's no argument. You're following a written document. There's no individualization in there, and it keeps matters of liability minimized for the organization. And so it's important for you to take a look at what your promotional policy is. And demotions probably don't happen all that often, but what your temporary assignments are, because you put people in temporary assignment as well while you're, waiting to fill a permanent position. And how are you going to compensate the employee for doing that for a long period of time? And so you really want to try to establish, we've given you some recommendations in the policy manual for you to consider, and then it just gives you, this is how we're going to apply the standard from this point forward, and it makes it a little bit easier for you to manage because you're doing it based on a policy. But with that then comes pay grade evaluations, and whenever there's a position that you're thinking about changing, and this is important, when you have a new position, or when you have a position that vacates, you're evaluating what it is that you want to do with the department, and that's really smart. You should look at every single vacancy you have. reevaluate it, how we're structured, does it need to change? If the position is changing, the position should be reevaluated where it's placed on the salary schedule. Because if you are going to change the function of the job, you might be then needing to change where the placement of the position is on the salary schedule. And so if you are going to be taking two positions, combining them, where are you going to place them on the salary schedule? If you have a methodology to do that, then it makes it a lot easier versus, I don't, you're not literally doing this, but, you don't want to, where'd you hit on the dartboard, that's where we're going to place the position. There needs to be some methodology behind that. And that is something that, Tina and I have not necessarily talked about on how to do the position evaluations, but that is certainly something that the organization could learn to do, okay? The other option is you can have third parties come in and do it, because then, all politics aside, you've got a third party who has, we don't have anything to do with the outcome, we just tell you where the position is. And so those policies are going to be very important for you to develop so that you know how to utilize this tool. Because this is a tool, it's a living, breathing document, and it adjusts over time. But you need to know how to utilize that effectively, and those policies will be the tools to help you with that. Okay? So implementation, when it comes right down to it, when we meet with, we'll be meeting with some employee groups this afternoon, later today, to explain to them what our recommendations are. We're going to be talking more with the employees about how we place positions on the salary schedule. For the elected officials, it's going to be more of the money, okay? How much is this going to cost the organization? And so what we've done for the purposes of implementation is we've placed all of the positions on the proper pay grade, and I'll cover how we did that here in a minute. But then we placed every employee, for the purposes of costing, we placed every employee on a step that is closest to the current wage that they are earning right now. And that's important to know, because this is purely an implementation. This is not a factor of the employee's performance at all. It's simply, you're on the old schedule, we're getting on the new schedule, this is how much it's going to cost. And I'm going to skip ahead here, because Tina, did they get a copy of the summary, the financial summary? Previously?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. And I've got that again here for you today. But some of the options that you have that are going to impact your finances are the following. You've got your date of implementation, all right? If you delay your implementation until mid-year next year, or even October 1 of next year, then you are actually delaying the cost of that, so that you've only got a partial in 2019, a partial cost in 2019, your full cost hits you in 2020. And what that does is that it gives you time to come up with your financial plan. The other thing that you have then is your temporary steps, and we talked about that. A temporary step is going to prolong, it's going to extend that implementation, but it's also going to be a little less impactful financially for you over the course of more years, versus if you were to try to take it all on at once. And then you've got the other step placement options. And at our last meeting, you asked us, well, what if we were to give extra people on those temporary lanes an extra step increase? And we ran a couple iterations for you, and we'll go through those here with you. But one of the things that you have to keep in mind is, I did 4 costings for you. I did 4 options. You're not held to those 4 options. You can do something that's different than what we costed for you. But when you do that, we just want to make sure that if you're going to offer something different, that you're doing it with a consistent rule, which means if, for example, you say we want to make sure that all employees receive at least a 1% increase, because we've got a number of employees who have not had any kind of an increase in a certain number of years, and we want to make sure that that is for everyone in pay grades. I'm just going to use off the top A through D, pay grades A through D. That's fine, you can do that, but you just got to make sure that it's everybody then within pay grade A through D, that you're not having exceptions saying, well, you'll do it for this employee but not for that employee. You just need to make sure that when you're developing those rules around the implementation, that you're applying it across the board to everybody. And so you've got some options there. You don't have to be held to what we are saying. You've got some options. So one of the things, when I handed this out, or when I gave this to Tina, I knew that this might be a little bit of a challenge to explain to you without me actually being here. So I'd like to take a couple of minutes to do that. And this is, you saw this when we sent out to you the draft report. And what this is it's basically telling you how much this is going to cost you based on your employees back in October. I know that you've had people coming and going since that time, and so this is it's a moving number, but it gives you a close example. If you look in the gray column, that would be the second, I guess, column, a full implementation in 1 year with no temporary lanes. A full year is approximately a little over 4% of what your total payroll is at about $168,000. That is if you were to do a direct implementation for a full year the first year. And so your subsequent numbers are if you did it in a half year. So a little over 2% if you did it in a half year. And the other 1% that you're seeing is you want to make sure that you're maintaining the schedule. This is all based on 2018 data. By 2019, you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping up with the market. And so if there's an opportunity for you to put that cost of living adjustment on the salary schedule, that's what that 1% means. So if you are able to adjust the salary schedule by 1%, that is that number. So it's 43,000. So in theory, let's say that you were going to go 7/1 of 19 with an extra 1%. It is the 84,000 with the 42,000. Okay, so that at least gives you some idea of how much we're talking about. If you go to the blue category, that is the 3-year temporary lanes. And what you will see here is that it slows down. Your full year implementation each year is only about 2%, maybe a little bit over that. And so that absolutely slows or delays the full implementation. And the important part, one of the important numbers here on your very last row in that area, that you're seeing a number 49, for example, under year 1. This is the number of employees that are going to be in the temporary lanes. So you've got almost 50 employees that are going to be in that temporary zone for the next couple of years so that you can see what kind of progress you're making by getting them out of the temporary. These are the people who they're below that competitive market wage significantly, and so we're utilizing the temporary lanes for them. Okay? And then if you will go right over to the far right-hand corner in the pink, we're going to skip the green and the orange color. This is your 2 temporary lanes, so it's a little bit more of an aggressive implementation. We're doing it in less years. You'll see your numbers there are popping up a little bit more, so you're over 2. You're at about 2.25%. But you will also take a look at then your employees again. By year 3, you got everyone out of those temporary lanes. So it all is going to boil down to what is it that you're going to be able to afford to do over the course of time. So the green have a lot of employees that fell into that. They've been there for 10 years and they're still at the minimum. So then what I did was, in the orange category, I took your 4-year implementation, and I said, look, if you're in pay grades 8 through I, if you're in that temporary lane, I'm giving everyone just an extra step to try to get them progressed out of the temporary lanes. And that certainly does help. You're helping about 35 employees to get them progressed through that temporary lane a little bit faster. One of the areas that I would caution you on, though, that we talked about is if you're giving increases in the lower part of the schedule, but not on the more entry-level part of the schedule, but not necessarily the higher paid positions, you are going to cause a little bit of compression by doing that. And so it's not that you can't do it, but what we are trying to eliminate the compression, and you might be actually compounding that problem. So you just have to kind of keep that in mind. So after I got off the phone with one of the commission members, then I actually ran a final iteration that you don't have in front of you today. But what I did was I said, all right, for anyone who is going to be on the implementation and that implementation results in less than a 1% increase, what do we need to do to make sure that everyone gets at least a 1% increase? For the purposes of this implementation. And you've got, again, 50 to 60 employees that might impact. That by giving them an extra step, to make sure that they get that extra, or gets that minimum of a 1% increase for a full year is gonna be about $40,000, so a partial year is about $20,000. So again, it's, you can do whatever, you know, you feel is best financially, and there is not really a right or wrong here. There's not. It's really what the organization feels that they can afford. And once you have worked through that, then, you know, you can give us a call and we can talk through, all right, what are you thinking about? And, you know, is that gonna be okay? Are there any problems or any concerns with that? And so, you know, that's, you know, the message that I wanna stress to everybody. All right. Yes, my time, and you probably have questions. All right, so I think I'll skip through this because this is on the record. Tina has a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And what I have here, now, did you receive a final copy of the report? A final?
It was in the packet.
It was in the packet.
Yes.
I do have hard copies if you'd like to take a hard copy with you. And I also have hard copy of the
Did you want
actual
hard copy?
salary schedules. Here we go.
He wants a hard copy also.
There we go. So you actually have it. You will find that the salary schedules that are in the back of your, that are in, I'm going to give you a different one, sir, because I think I split that one off. In the back of your final document aren't necessarily exactly like the ones that I just gave you. I minimized a couple of columns just because, you know, I'm forcing it onto an 8.5 by 11. So you'll want to take a look at your 8.5 by 14 for all of the information. Questions?
Clear as mud?
Yeah, clear as mud.
So you stated that we are very conservative in our overtime.
Mhm.
Is that the standard to be so, especially on salary employees, to kind of restrict their overtime?
Well, what you are utilizing is comp time. So if they're going over an hours, it's not that you're not compensating them, you're just doing it in the form of comp time, which is acceptable. That is an acceptable practice in the public sector.
Okay.
We typically see your roads, bridges department and your sheriff's department having a little bit more flexibility with utilizing that overtime in lieu of the comp time. And so it is a little bit unusual because we normally see departments that have that overtime. I mean, I know that you have it in ambulance, you're allowing it in ambulance, and most organizations will say, we can't manage it with comp time, so we allow the overtime. But I didn't get a lot of feedback on that was necessarily problematic. Your employees, they get it, they understand. So, I mean, you certainly can go to overtime, but when you do that, then you start losing control of your budget because you aren't gonna be able to predict when the major crime happens and the sheriff's department are, you know, that type of thing, right? And so, because you can't necessarily predict it, you can't always make sure that you're gonna stay within the budget either.
But I was referring specific, okay, I want to say, in salary employees, how would that apply then? When you have a salary employee or exempt
The
employee?
salaried employee does not get overtime. Right.
Right, so they can work as many
They work
hours.
as many hours necessary.
And we
for
don't
to
have
get
to
the
say
job
they
done.
should just work 40, you know, they can work 60 if that's what it takes to get the job done.
They can
And
work
that's,
20 to get it done. Right.
and that's perfectly acceptable.
But make sure that we're talking about exempt employees, because some organizations will also, you know, have salary for the non-exempt, but at that, you know, because it's easier for their payroll purposes or whatnot, and you have to make sure though that even if they're salaried, if they're non-exempt, they still need to have some sort of compensation after that 40, but as I understand it, you are utilizing comp time for those situations.
And what you may want to do for salaried or exempt level employees is have a flexible schedule policy, so that if I have to end up working, you know, these 3 nights because of a snowstorm, you know, it's not a 1 hour for hour, but I can take a couple hours off on Friday, you know, that kind of thing.
What is the difference? Explain to me some of the differences in exempt, I mean, the legal requirements for exempt versus just for salaried employee.
Well, you just finished the class. No, I just sent her to a 3-day FLSA class. So basically, the federal law has several exemptions, which means exemptions from overtime, and they're professional, executive, administrative are the 3 that typically apply to you. There are some other ones that just don't necessarily apply. and there's thresholds that you have to meet for each one of those. X amount of salary, even if the person has exempt level job responsibilities, if they don't meet the salary threshold, they are still non-exempt and have to be treated as hourly. So that's the first one. After that, you then have to go through kind of a little bit of a test, and basically it looks at number of people supervised in some cases. It will look at the authority and ability to make decisions, judgment, and again, the law does realize that nobody has the ultimate authority, but the authority to effectively recommend, and those recommendations 9 times out of 10 are taken. But there's some very strict rules as to what qualifies for exempt and non-exempt. So a lot of times people think, oh, well, this is a professional level position, it should automatically be based on a salary. That's not necessarily true because that they don't meet the definitions.
So if they don't meet the definition, though, of exempt, they can still be just a salaried employee?
They could be a salaried employee, but as Melina indicated, if they work any hours over 40, then they have to be compensated at time and a half, either through comp time or through pay.
Okay.
So we get that a lot. I know you don't have one here. We get that a lot in fire departments. Where fire departments, because they have a different type of a schedule, there technically should be a small check and a large check depending upon the FLSA cycle. And so a lot of municipalities say, well, we're just going to equalize it over the 26 pay periods. Well, you can do that as long as each pay period you're looking to see is somebody, should get less pay or more pay because they haven't met that. They're under 40 or over 40.
So you actually have exempt, salary, and an hourly, and that's pretty much.
I like to keep it much simpler. You either have exempt, which are exactly exempt salary, and you have hourly, and just keep it just keep that separate. Don't have exempt or non-exempt salary. It just makes life too complicated.
Okay, so you have two.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah,
either
two.
exempt
Yeah.
salary or
Yeah.
you're hourly.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing you can't do is we do have some organizations that they'll say an exempt employee, well, we're not going to pay you more for working over 40, but we're going to deduct the week that you work less. Well, you can't do that. So it's the number of hours necessary in order to get the job done. So it could be 30 hours this week, it could be 60 hours next week. You're not going to deduct and pay them over 30 this week, only 30 this week, and 40 next week. It's no, you pay them a straight salary regardless of how many hours you work.
Now, I have seen already where people that work on 2-week pay intervals, they might work less one week than the other, but then somehow
It's
that
per
evens
defined
out.
work week. So you have, your pay period versus your defined work week are two separate things. So in your employee handbook, you have to have a defined work week. So from midnight Sunday to 11:59 Saturday, that's your work week. And within that work week, if you work over 40, you have to be compensated. Doesn't matter that your pay period doesn't come until the second week.
Okay.
In the private sector, you may find in the medical industry that they will do 2 weeks because they have some allowances for that, but that is very specific in the private sector. It's very narrowly focused, so you can't do that like in your health department here as an example. That wouldn't qualify for that. So there are a few exceptions
Right,
to
and
that.
there are some exceptions for police and fire. So
Yes.
your sheriff's department could be on something different than a 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
The other piece that complicates that is how do you do hours worked versus hours paid. So basically the FLSA says that you have to pay overtime for all hours worked, which means I'm here physically working. But you do pay them for other types of things, vacation, sick leave, holiday. In many organizations, vacation, sick leave, and holiday, you'll get paid for it, but if you took it within that week, it might offset your whether or not you got overtime. It means you might be paid 45 hours, but you're only getting your 45 hours of straight time because 8 of those hours was a holiday or a vacation day or a sick day. Some places will count those as hours worked, which means, all right, you took a day for a vacation day, that brought you to 45 hours, 40 hours are straight time, 5 hours are time and a half. So it depends upon your policies for your holiday, vacation, sick leave. And we're doing this right because your attorney's nodding. So
This getting back to this comp time, sometimes that gets to be kind of problematic, where you've got, say you got a bad winter, you got all these road crews out and that sort of thing, and they build up tons of comp time. Well, then When do they wanna take calm time?
In the
When the
summer.
weather's nice, and it becomes a scheduling nightmare for your department head when you've got projects to get done, but all these guys needing to take off.
You know, you can develop a policy, for example, to say during major events, whether it's a storm, you've got a washout, or it's the snowstorm and you've got people, a tornado, yep, exactly, yep, we're going to what state. You can do that where you could say, the employees can qualify for overtime for those additional hours, for those events to try to keep that comp time a little bit more balanced. You can do that as long as you follow the rule of, anything over the 40 hours is time and a half. Whether you're paying them in this form of overtime pay or you're paying them in the form of comp time, that's what's most important.
Plus, you should have a policy in place that limits the a maximum amount of comp time, which you probably already do, where you can only up to X amount. After that, you either have to take it or you have to take it and pay.
Okay. So when you're talking overtime, I noticed on your original schedule that you sent us, so you depicted EMTs and AMTs and the EMS service in
Yeah.
general. In your salaries that you're reporting on your sheet was just their hourly rate. You did not
Yes.
include the overtime. And I went through this last year. And that's very sticky right there because I'm under the impression and was told overtime is expected. Overtime is just part of the pay.
Yeah.
So in essence, when you're showing on our report salaries of 20,000 or 28,000 or whatever it is, that is truly not 100% accurate because those people are really making a lot more because of the mandatory, I want to say mandatory, a lot of the counties refer to it as mandatory overtime, which is part of the pay.
Yeah.
Depending upon the
Yeah.
work cycle or the pay schedule, there's sometimes automatic pay built in, overtime built into it. Just because for an EMT, for example, they do not qualify for something called the 7K exemption, which allows a longer work period than 40 hours, because they don't have the fire component. So you do have to pay for anything over 40 hours. Now, depending upon their work schedules, if they're 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, or 24 hours, within that time period, you're going to have overtime just by working the schedule. And you're right, in compensation, we take that into account in the placement onto the salary schedule, but we have to look at base pay to base pay since everybody's work schedule is so different. I'll go to fire, we were just talking about that at breakfast, you could have 24/48, you can have 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 48 off. Then now I've got some departments in Missouri that are doing 48/96 schedules. Once you get into all that, you're right, how do you compare that? So you do base pay to base pay.
So when I was looking at your competitors, our comparable competitors, I see you have a list of counties.
Mhm.
That's who you went to, was those counties?
Right, there was one city that
And-
was ambulance.
And you used some counties that are very large counties that have huge populations. You think that's kind of a fair thing to throw into the mix, really?
Do you want to talk about that, or do you want me to?
What we do is, you're right, we do go to a number of organizations because in some places people feel, well, if you didn't go to Wichita County, the study's terrible. Well, Wichita may pay higher. The one in Kansas, everybody wants us to compare to Overland Park. If we don't put Overland Park in the study, it's not a legitimate study. So what we do at that point is we create an average, but we do a statistical analysis around that average. So if that number, that salary is either too high outside of that range or too low outside of those outliers are going to be eliminated. Now, in some cases, Wichita may stay in because it stays within those parameters. In some cases, Wichita may be thrown out because it's too high. So we don't want to skew the average exactly what you are indicating, which a lot of people think about. Because my favorite saying is this: elected officials want us to keep all the low numbers in, employees want us to keep all the high numbers in, and we don't make either one of you happy. We're going to throw both of those out. So you're right, there may be a county in there like Overland Park that pays huge, 9 times out of 10 was probably eliminated from the average, so it's not skewed.
About geographically, we've got, the west side's got a lot of larger, unless she's talking about bigger cities around and larger counties. The east side over here don't have as many,
Right.
and we lose people to
look at how you know, where you want to pay your employees. You're right. I have worked in a number of organizations where the next door neighbor is a huge municipality and it's drawing everybody away. But there's nowhere you can pay like them. So what you need to do is what can we afford to get closer to that so it's not a huge gap. I'll give you an example. We at the time did Pitkin County, Colorado. Right next door was the city of Aspen. The city of Aspen has a pay philosophy to pay at the 85th percentile. Okay, that doesn't happen very often. Pitkin County was paying the average market rate. The problem we had was that the police officers for the city of Aspen and the sheriff's deputies for Pitkin County shared a building. So there was a $6,000 hiring difference between a sheriff's deputy and a police officer. So the question became, all right, Pitkin County, because of their tax base versus the city of Aspen, couldn't come up to $6,000, but could we break that down, and what other things can Pitkin County offer that the city may not be offering that would entice folks to that? So we were able to narrow the gap, and now the city of Aspen is one of my clients as well, so we've actually made it almost the same. But it took some time to do that. But you need to know what those numbers are, so can you minimize that gap, or you can say, well, you're right, we're $3,000 less, but we have this, or we have more flexibility, you know.
So using that same scenario that you just used, are we as a county, if we were to fully implement this, are we doing the same thing to our cities throughout our county? Because can they match us now? Can they provide the same salaries or comparable salaries, or must they get into their tax dollar budgets?
Yeah, I'll let Melena clarify that, because she's played with the data much more than I have. I don't think so, because that's not our goal, unless you came to us and say, we want our salaries to be at the 55th or the 60th percentile. You know, we definitely want to have that edge. We want to be the city of Aspen, where we are the highest paid organization around. Typically, when we do studies, we want to make sure that you're competitive to the average, so that, you know, unless you say our philosophy is to be the leader, you're now going to be competitive with everybody else. Now, in a couple positions you might be higher, a couple positions you might be lower, but you're really not going to say all of a sudden everybody's going to quit their jobs and move to Marion County because you're the highest paying organization, and, you know, you can clarify with the data.
And that's exactly it. I mean, we use the 50th, which is middle of the road, it's average. And so again, you're gonna have organizations that are paying higher than you and lower than you, and you are gonna be in that mix where you're gonna have some organizations where they're gonna be paying more than you, and there's gonna be some where they're paying less than you. But an overall average, we made you average, okay? No, we didn't give you anything more than average.
And I know average always sounds bad, especially to employees, but I'll tell you this, we've been doing compensation studies with 300 and some clients in 35 states for the past 18 years. 80% of municipal clients pay at the average rate. You know, you have a handful that are now getting to the 52nd or the 55th percentile, but that is not the typical pay philosophy for municipal government. Whether you're a small little village all the way up to a huge, I mean, I'm doing a county in Michigan where we have 450 job titles just in the non-union group, you know, and they're paying at the average market rate. That's typical.
Do you have any questions?
No.
Randy? Any more questions?
I think I'll let, you know, Melena have any parting comments. I think what Melena has done here and what we've done for you is really create a nice system. It's a system so that whether it's you or whether it's a county administrator, or whether it's HR, you're using the process consistently. And so therefore you're taking some of the liability out, but you're having a nice competitive system that has some structure to it. And I think if you utilize it, it'll last you for several years as long as you continue to update it and every now and then take some periodic checks. It shouldn't cost you as much as it is right now if you follow it.
I think overall, because you know, I've been giving you bits and pieces of this entire project every time that I've met with you, and now today you've got to see it in its totality, and it's a lot to absorb. And so over the course of the next couple of months, as you are looking at this and making decisions about which direction Marion County needs to go, everyone has my number. They have my number. Tina has my number, and if you have questions, you can certainly, give a call, send an email. I'll respond, as soon as I'm able. That's usually, our general rule is within about a day, we'll at least get back to you to say, yep, I got your question, and, let's set up a call or whatever that may be. We will be as involved or uninvolved in the implementation process for you. Usually that's probably going to fall on Tina because she, is overall responsible for, the payroll, setup and whatnot. And so, if she's got questions on the costing sheets and all of that type of thing, we're just a phone call away. Absolutely. Okay.
Not that I wanna offend anybody in the room, but we're not attorneys, so
Yeah.
phone calls and emails are free.
They are with me too. I do this
Yeah,
as a philanthropic kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
I think one thing that I see is your CPI, if you stay with that, it brings your schedule up. If you did a 3-year implementation or 2-year, whatever you decided to do, you're not behind the 8 ball by the time you get everything brought up. You're still bringing it up with the
You might be a little bit
CPI.
behind the 8 ball, especially if CPI continues to trend the way it's going. And so I prefer, and I'm just telling clients to take more a conservative approach on CPI right now, because even though October last year was 2.5%, now if you look at it right now, it's almost 3.5%. I don't think you should jump up that high yet. Let's see if the trend continues, but you're exactly right.
It goes like that.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
And if you use CPIU versus CPI local, there's less up and down.
Right.
Where locals have a tendency to really pop up and down, we prefer the CPIU, which looks at the whole nation and it's not as volatile.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'll be back later.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, Anthony.
great. All right, so next is Courtney Baines out there, or did she go together?
She is not going to be here today.
She's not gonna be here
No.
today? Okay.
She has a full court schedule, so.
Okay, I see Jesse Ham is on the agenda. Is he out there?
Uh-huh.
Okay, have him come on in, Jesse. Okay, Jesse, go ahead.
I have a permit here for fiber to be bored under Meridian and 90th from Mound Ridge telephone.
Had you looked at this, Brad?
That right there, I have not given that to him though.
Oh, these things pretty standard. You wanna take a look at it or something?
I'm sure it is.
They've done a bunch of these.
Mound Ridge telephone born fiber.
It's just a road crossing permit. Oh,
Road
wait
permit.
a moment. Okay.
Yeah, let's see anything unusual here at all.
Goes to you now, Tina. Did you get a copy?
Thank you.
Here's a bid from, or quote from Circle C Paving on the West Tampa Road for crack sealing that U3 asked me to do, for that 4-mile stretch. They would be able to be in the county between January and February to get those cracks sealed up. If you remember correctly, the patching that took place on 3/30th, west of Tampa this summer, Diamond Vista had wrote us a check for the sealing and, or the patching, and then the crack sealing of those 2 miles, first 2 miles going west. That ended up being $11,135, and what's available from that check is little over $5,200 now to get put towards that there.
Did you just contacted this one company? You didn't,
That's what you three told me to do.
this one company, because this is what they've done this before?
Yes.
Circle one.
Circle C paving,
Circle C.
They the one that did the,
Sunflower
yeah.
this summer.
Did you want to look at it?
What are we looking at?
12,000.
Yeah, 12 even.
5 of that, 5,200 available for this. 5,200.
5,200 is
Yeah,
available.
available.
I'm sorry, Jesse, when did you say they could begin this?
Between January and February.
And in this case, Brad, it wasn't necessary to put out bids to anybody, you just go ahead and do this, okay? Okay, so, I guess the sooner we get started, the better.
Did we make a motion then, Jesse, to go ahead and do it? Or just have
I don't
it
think
on?
there was a motion. I think you three just told me
Get price.
get some prices and get that price and we'll make a decision.
I'd make a motion to go with Circle C paving for crack sealing 330th Road from K-15 to Limestone Road for the cost of $12,000.
Okay, got a motion on the floor by Randy to accept the bid from Circle C Paving, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Did you need this?
That'd be great. I'll just make a copy.
Okay,
I just wanted to go over some, pass them all down.
All of them?
Yeah, just one each. Something I've been working on for a little while. Some prices have changed just recently due to new rock for 2019. Trying to get have some plans here for long term as far as the bigger projects. As far as you can see on the top side, those are ideal right now. Some of the bigger projects that we need to do some work on. Everything below is kind of where I'm getting pricing from as far as JL Unruh, Everett Trucking right now. And some of the rock that we're liking or wanting to try. Right now I'm doing a little test on about 12 miles of some rock up in the northeast corner of the county with 1.25 inch roadstone out of Harrington, the Delavan Airport, Harrington Airport. Right now that's at $9 a ton for us, and with Everett Trucking hauling it and laying it down for us on our roads in the northeast corner is about $9.15 a ton more added onto that. They were supposed to get started today on that, but there's a delay in that, so. But kind of, the bottom kind of shows you, you know, what I have listed up there is 18 miles. What I've been able to try to get knocked out the past couple of years is 8 to 12 miles of a full rebuild. So down there at the bottom, it's kind of, with these pricing, the pricing that I'm showing you here, that's kind of the total number for the full rebuild of materials and hauling.
so you said that 1.25 inch out of Harrington, road rock was $9 a ton?
The stuff out of Harrington.
Out of Harrington, out of clearing number 111 or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Stuff we tried last year, Diane, was $12.15 from Woodbine.
Okay. Maybe we can negotiate a little bit better price on that.
On the 9 stuff?
I don't know. Yeah. I see you're using 2-inch rock base, road base rock, on some, is that your rebuilds?
Yeah.
Is that, and, do you think that's maybe a little big? I mean, based on some of the reports that we had here recently, that 2-inch it's maybe too big even on a base, even on a base? Do you think we should continue
Well-
using 2-inch?
I mean, I don't have to.
I'm just asking you the question based on the reports that we received in the past saying that that was too big.
But he was saying for the top rock was too big. He was just thinking that the top rock was too big for 1.5 is what I've been using for the top rock, the road rock itself.
This would be right after you pull the dirt up and everything, you'd use 2-inch on top of that, right
Yeah,
on top of
start
that. to s-
mixing water and packing.
Right.
And then capping it with the road rock on top, which he said that we're probably using something too big. We need something with a lot more fines to cap that base off.
So this is just, you're just giving this to us so we know what your long-term,
Yeah,
road
that,
plan
I'm just
is.
trying to show you some pricing there, kind of ideal is some of the things that I'm trying to target. You know, I've been working on a short-term deal that's kind of changing every day, some of the things that we knock out, stuff like that. So I have one of them created as well, it's just, it changes a lot since it's short-term, trying to get things accomplished.
okay. Well, I'm glad that you're buying rock someplace other than Harshman. How far away is Waverly, by the way, from Harshman?
It's about an hour and a half. And from, like, last year, with it being hauled in to Florence was $15.89.
The time for hauling?
Yeah, no, just the hauling and the rock was a total of $15.89, so,
Okay.
which is on there.
Oh, I see, so you just didn't, okay, so it's the one down at the bottom.
The, right there, kind of the fourth line,
In the
the
middle.
1-inch Coffee County Road Rock,
Right in the middle.
$15.89 a ton.
Oh, I see, okay, so that's from Harshman, from
Yes.
Waverly.
Yes.
Is that what you used on Yarrow?
Yes.
Yeah, Yarrow.
Yarrow.
Is that the same soft rock that, has that been tested by KDOT?
I believe, yeah, it has been tested. This is a whole different vein from the Waverly area. This ain't coming from Florence or anything like that in our county. This is like a gray looking rock like what you see out of like Ottawa and stuff.
Yeah, they just haul it up here and stockpile it.
They stockpile for it. I mean, we did that 7,500 ton, 7,500 ton from Woodbine and then 7,500 ton from Waverly.
Oh, okay, so I see what you're doing here. So you're actually saying from that quarry right now, so you buy the rock and you pay the hauling, we're gonna be paying $23.39 a ton.
Yes, if I have JL under, yeah, take it from Florence. Now, having a trucking company do the base rock, it seems to really help out a lot, getting the mile rocked. And then there's a lot of times where we can get our own trucks to haul the top rock, to be able to cut that price down. To keep it at that $15.89.
And so, are you gonna start sharing the purchase of the rock with different quarries, or are you thinking about continuing just with Waverly?
Well, not just with Waverly, what I have, I'm still working on trying to find some other stuff, other prices. I don't have everything here, it's just some of the stuff that I wanna try from Harrington, I think might be pretty decent stuff. And I know this Waverly stuff is working. There's some other things I wanna look into as far as prices, I just haven't got that all done yet. So no, I'm not just stuck on these two and these two only.
Okay, and I would also say on the rock, based on what we've experienced over the last couple of years, price is important, but I think we need to start looking at a little bit better quality also. I mean, I realize price is important, but right now, I would not put everything on price myself.
I'm not trying to.
Okay. So, okay,
I did have a conversation with Harshman's. They are meeting today, and I told them what we were talking about and wanting to know what they could do price-wise that would be a little more competitive if they wanted to continue to do business with the hard harder rock from Waverly, and they'll be getting back with you. So.
And that's fine, even though we're talking about quality of rock, I think another thing that we have to start doing, which I noticed on our warrants, we can't be buying from just the same company all the time, that is favoritism. And we have so many quarries around that we need to spread it around. So I'm totally opposed to buying all that rock from Harshaman, Waverly, because it's still Harshaman. Still the same, check goes to the same place, basically, so. And like I said once before, I think this spring, I even suggested, if you want to divide the county in half, do the southern half with Harshaman, that would save a lot of hauling, and the same way do the northern half from Woodbine, or Harrington, whatever, would be fine too. We'd save a lot of money.
This year I'll be able to stockpile up north because I do not have piles at our lots up north. Last year it was a little bit more expensive bringing in the Woodbine just because my lots were filled with chip seal stuff, materials. So I'll be able to utilize Pilsen, Tampa, Ramona on the north end of the county as far as stockpiling.
So you said because your piles, you didn't have the space, it was more expensive?
No, just by them stockpiling all the way down here to Marion.
Oh, I see. Okay, by hauling it that far.
Yeah, by hauling it to Marion and stockpiling. So, I mean, I'm not talking a lot of money, but I think it'd be a little bit cheaper by stockpiling up north as well.
Yeah. And I would rather save the money on hauling versus quality of rock. So that's why I say maybe if we divide the county in half, you save quite a bit there on hauling.
Correct.
Whatever we want to do, we're still trying to get quality.
I know that, that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm harping on Harrington and Woodbine based on the reports in the KDOT.
Woodbine last year put us out some rock that wasn't so great, so just keep that
Well,
in mind.
I know what you said, but I also know that when I read the report, he also went into detail as to when you put the rock on, especially when it was so dry, and then we graded it multiple times, he caused the line to break down by not handling that rock properly, the way I read the report.
But the rock that I seen the bucket from was right after it had been done.
Oh, and I seen that too.
Yeah,
I did, I seen
where
that
the
too.
fills, the fines was in
Yeah,
there with that and
mhm,
stuff.
that's right, I seen
Compared
that.
to,
But they
So-
said that you need at least 10% of those fines
You
in
need
there
some
for
fines.
compaction.
Mhm.
So, I didn't think that was terrible.
I'm just saying, I just want good quality, no matter what we're gonna do here.
Well, we haven't been
If
getting
we're
it for
spending
a
the-
long time,
If we're spending
so-
the money cause that's at $23 a ton, $23.39,
And that's out of Waverly.
and we need good rock, I mean, that's what we need, but,
So, yeah, you'd wanna really watch that out of Waverly and make sure that for 2389 you're getting good rock, yes.
Well, you need to keep bird camp in mind too, because if they can get quarried to, I think where they want to quarry,
The only thing is they're not sending theirs into KDOT to have it tested for strength.
they're not.
No, and I've asked them,
And there's probably a reason.
I think there is, but, so, I don't know why they're not.
which quarry are you talking about?
The Lincolnville.
East of
Oh, Lincolnville.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I can't imagine why they're not testing, but I mean, there's some reason.
So I have not purchased a lot from there
Yeah.
because of that.
And I don't think we should be purchasing if they're not gonna have it tested. I
Well,
mean,
What about some of the stuff that will be pulled up off the wind farm? We're still gonna have some opportunity on some of that, which,
Yeah, I mean,
high quality, but it's something that can be used.
And we just gotta be careful with it being reclaimed,
Right.
having how much dirt is mixed with it.
Right.
But I'm not gonna turn it away,
No.
but we just gotta be careful with it.
Anyhow, there's a lot of dirt roads and stuff that we can put that on, or bad roads, or mud roads, whatever. Okay.
Do we know of any other prices that we're gonna get from anybody else besides?
Not right now.
Not right now.
And Woodbine's been offering quite a few free roads again. Did you
Just
get
a couple, 2 loads is all they've offered. I did not make it that day that they had the opportunity there.
We could probably still get it though.
I can talk to Jane and see what she can do.
Does Harshman ever offer any type of free loads ever? I don't ever see that.
No, they have not.
I don't think so. Okay. Of course, right now I wouldn't want it anyway. So that's your plan so far? So, are you done with that
Yes, ma'am.
proposal? So then, I know that you're aware of some people up in the wind turbine area is wanting to keep some of those wider openings, okay? And so there's been some,
Intersections.
yes, there's been some, questions asked and some people wanting to do that, and they've been talking to the wind company and Brian Fry, and I had some phone calls and things like that. The last thing that I heard was that that is fine, to keep it as wide as they can, as long as we're not having to purchase any land and we're staying, you know, and that's, I just wanna make sure that is suitable, right?
Yes, I sent a email to Brian to pass on to the right people saying that we do not want to acquire any more right-of-way or purchase any ground. If you can make it more than 24 foot in width, and stay within our right-of-way, I give them permission to do so.
That won't require any easements on
No,
our part.
that's part of my email saying I don't wanna get involved in any of that, and that's what we had discussed the last time, we don't wanna get involved in that, so they said they were gonna try to make 30, 40, if they can go 50, but there's not a lot of right of way, 50 foot is usually from
Because, you know,
back
the
slope to
the
back
people that were asking me about it, wanted those just left the way they were. I said, well, you know, those are sitting on private lands, and so that requires a lot of legal work and easements, and some might approve it and some may not.
What about culverts, Jesse? What is that,
They're-
when we do that, what does that include? I mean,
Well, a lot of
get out
times
there, you
they're,
gotta have culverts.
whatever they're using, whatever they're taking out, that's coming to us as well. If it's still good, they're leaving it as an option for us to take,
Okay.
whatever they're using, put in there. So,
So I just want to verify that then, that would be okay.
yeah,
Okay, cause that's what I heard, and that's what I told the people that that's what you
Yes.
had said,
yes.
okay? Do you have anything else?
No, that'd be it.
Do you have anything, Ken?
Oh,
Maybe? Do you have anything?
What, you told me you were gonna get us some quotes on some of those, shoulder recyclers.
Okay, I'll work on that this week.
So you don't have anything then, Randy?
No,
Okay. So will you be around for a little while this morning yet, Kent? Sorry, not Kent. Will you be around a little bit, Jesse? You'll
Yes,
be around, I
I
know
can
you
be.
will be. Okay. Because I would like to have an executive session, but we got a full schedule. So could we just call you back a little bit later? Won't be long.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'd like to ask the county commissioners and Jesse, what's the long-term plans? I know Mr. Bowers said equipment, mowers. I think, a couple of months ago, we talked about getting more mowers, but we don't have tractors to pull those mowers. What's the long-term range for equipment for the county to move forward with the recommendations?
And I have another question, kind of like that, because and this is just a question. I know the fire department sometimes will come out and burn for practice. I know when I was doing the cleanup out the lake, we had some of the volunteer firemen had contacted me and said that they like to come out in areas and they will do a burn, supervised burn, for training and things like that. Would we be able to implement something like that since we're short on those in some of the areas where it's really bad? Could we work with the fire department and stuff and see if they can do a couple miles or something and burn that for us so we can
I can ask them,
expedite some of this?
I can ask them what they're
So
saying.
we've been doing a little bit of that, haven't we? Or
This
is it
year
just
we
brush-
have not
Or has
been
it just
burning
been brush pile?
Last year we did burning of ditches.
Because I know sometimes a maintainer lights something off when they're out on a section. I mean, that's been a practice in the past.
Yeah, I can ask them.
It'd be nice if you did see what they could do, because I know they were anxious to do it out at the lake, but we were so restricted as to what we could do out there, I never pursued it.
As far as equipment, yeah, tractors are, I'm shorthanded on tractors, and I would like to work with the commission on getting more tractors, maybe shoulder machines, some of this, for these projects to help us out, utilizing some of our older equipment as well, so, that is one thing I'm trying to work on is, for sure tractors, so.
And in your search for this equipment, are you considering and looking at used since we
Yes.
have to buy so much?
Yes.
We have had the 2 mowers delivered though, haven't we?
We're picking them up today, the brand new mowers.
But if we don't have tractors.
Right. Well,
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yes.
we do have a couple of them.
We've got one, right, Jesse?
No, we have 3 two
But
tractors.
two had to
are-
be rebuilt. Have they been rebuilt?
We have 3 tractors, one of them is being rebuilt now.
Okay, so you have
yeah.
2 operating tractors now?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they got shared between mowing and rebuilding roads.
Okay.
So, that's why very minimally mowing.
Yes, sir.
My goal would be 1 tractor more per quarter section of the county.
Sure.
And to be passed around,
Yeah.
if we can get to that, that's a good goal to start with.
So how many mowers do we have with the 2 new ones that are usable?
We have 1 tractor with a boom mower. Got that.
Mhm.
And then we have 1 good, I say good, 1 decent used Land Pride, what I call pull behind batwing. And then there are 2 new ones we're getting today, batwings, pull behind. So, 2 brand new ones, 1 used one, and then a boom mower. You cannot cover the miles with the boom mower as you can with the pull behind mowers.
I think we're about 1 good mower and 2 tractors short probably to get to a 4 quarter.
So is that something that you have to work into next year's budget, or I mean, when as a taxpayer and a person in the community, when might we see some of this happening? Were we looking 6 months, we looking a year?
I have room in my budget for this year to, after I pay the 2019 bills, I have room in my equipment budget to be able to go with mowers, or not mowers, tractors. Because we are getting a lot of debt paid off through our equipment budget, so I'm starting to get more flexibility of being able to buy more stuff, and I think graders and tractors and stuff like that are, they got really nice used stuff out there for that equipment, so.
So have you been looking at the KDOT stuff, the KDOT used stuff, and
That and
anything?
township
And
stuff,
township,
they
and-
usually do leases, so they only put 1,000 to 3,000 hours on it, and, you know, yeah, just, there's good equipment out there, for use, so, and brand new like graders, even if I have everything, if I have my full budget to spend on a grader, I don't have enough for 1 brand new one on it, depending on what size or options you get, but new is kind of just out of the option as far as I'm concerned with graders,
Yeah.
because they're so expensive.
But in the other hand, you can't go buy a 5 to 10-year-old grader with half worn out, because.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you can find an
Yes.
the off-lease market, those are,
And those seem to be popping up more often, with like graders and stuff, so.
I think they're flooding the market with them, they want townships and stuff to do a 3-year, and so they can turn it back and get close to keeping good shape.
And I was gonna start checking out and asking Jesse to check out, really, I'm really sold on KDOT only because I know the quality that they buy when they first buy their new ones. It's not like when you go to the local implement stores around here. They have, because especially the mowers, they go through a heck of an abuse as you're going down different areas and different terrains and stuff, so I think that's something we need to keep in mind too, where we buy, especially on a mower.
And I guess I have one other question to the commissioners and to
Yes,
Road
go
and
ahead.
Bridge. That, when will we in the community learn about the long-term plan for grading and rebuilding of the roads? Because, you know, your report that came out from Mr. Bowers said, we need to change what we're doing. Jesse, you said you aren't doing all the things that he's doing. So when will that come together and we know and start seeing what we're gonna move towards? So,
Well, that's a question for Jesse then.
Well, I mean, I'd like to start going in here this next year. I mean, I intend to. I hope everyone understands, this time of year, wet, freezing, thawing, snowing, rain, I just can't go and do that right now at this point in time, this part of the season, but come spring, I'm gonna be trying to hit it hard. That is full intentions for sure.
And I appreciate that, Jesse, but I'm also gonna say that this summer, your comment to me and to the township board was it was too dry to do anything. So, and again, I keep saying, there's never a good time, so we're gonna have to just dig in and start doing something, whether it's mowing the sides of the ditches, getting it ready. I'm not gonna micromanage what you're doing, but I'm saying, that's what I hear. Summer was too dry, now it's too wet, now we're back to another cycle of nothing.
There might have been some misunderstanding. The dryness, if I can hit it while it's dry, try to do these rebuilds, shoulder knockoffs, that's the time I gotta be trying to hit it.
But I understand
If there
that.
was some misunderstanding, I'm sorry.
Well, but 3 months in District 1, you were not in our district because you said it was too dry to do anything.
No,
So-
we were in a full rebuild, ma'am, in another part of the county where I pulled blade men to help with the full rebuild projects.
Okay, so, I don't know, I'm just asking.
Which I'm trying to make adjustments on for our full rebuilds in the future, so we don't have that time lapse of someone going in their sections that long.
Yes, Randy, you had a question.
Yeah, now, there, some of the things you were talking about, I think, are a pretty good idea, you know, like the, shoulder rebuilders, you know, they're, well, because we don't have anything like that in the county. I think that might be a good thing to have. But I'm wondering, as far as buying more, I'm wondering if, as far as buying more tractors, well, and mowers, well, I have almost a new batwing mower, and usually I have extra tractors around, and there's quite a few other farmers, you know, that have the same thing. I'm just wondering if we couldn't have the greater guys just giving me a call every once in a while, give me a call every once in a while and say, hey, you know, we're starting to get behind on mowing the outside ditches, you know, well, and I'd sure be happy to do some of that, and I think there's other farmers that probably would also, but it kind of seems to me none of us have a shoulder rebuilder, and most of us don't have graders. If the county could just concentrate on keeping the roads graded and rock hauled, you know, maybe some of the grader guys or Jesse, you know, could try to stay on some of us farmers and say, hey, you know, we need to mow this and need to do this over here so that we can concentrate on grading your roads and making sure rock is hauled.
So you're saying right around your property,
Well,
because
Yeah,
that would,
well, yeah.
I mean, around an individual person's property, not yours, but like,
Yeah,
like
like
the farmers, instead of just doing in front of their house, maybe go a mile down the road, they
Yeah,
go
or
down
2
their
or 3 or
section
8.
or
Yeah,
whatever. Okay,
yeah.
I see what you're saying.
But, I mean, and the reason I say this, you know, basically I got more, you know, I probably used 2 or 3 days out of the year, so it just makes sense to use it 7 or 8 if it's something that will kind of help out.
The only problem I have is you're not suggesting letting the county borrow it, are you? You're
It
saying
don't
you're gonna
matter.
do it.
It don't
Well, you
matter.
know you're not gonna get the same care as you would do your own.
Right. There, mainly I was just, mainly I was saying, you know, well, that I would do it by self, you know, and there's probably some years I probably spend a lot of time just driving up and down the roads and a bit mowing anyway. There's probably other years like this year when we had a lot of rain, you didn't have a lot of days. It's like, I should have done that, I should have done this. You know, that's probably where either Jesse or one of the road patrol guys, you know, says, hey, you know, you really aren't doing a very good job over here. You know, you needed to.
Brad, what kind of
Are you gonna let me
liability
call
would
you
we
and
have
tell you
on
that, Randy? I'm
Sure
gonna-
I will.
Okay, I will call you and tell you.
Go
You're not doing a good job.
I think-
Randy.
Agreed, Brad.
I think all
Okay,
that
just a
would
minute.
be great if we could deal with it from a liability aspect.
Yes.
Brad, yeah, I was just gonna ask you, that's gonna be a keg of worms, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a
I mean, it's
wonderful
a
idea.
nice suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
It really
Yes,
is very
yes.
nice, but I don't think we could do that, but I appreciate
Well,
that.
now, probably it wouldn't work, you know, as far as me going over to somebody else's place and doing it, but it would sure be all right, you know, to do it by the stuff I own, because you own to the center of the road anyway, and basically you just have an easement, you know.
So then you're simply saying we should encourage property owners
Right,
to
that's,
do
I
that.
suppose that's kind of what I'm saying in a nice way.
Okay.
But at the same time, though, Jesse could hire him as a part-time employee.
Well, we had discussed that
You're
too, about
talking
getting
about
part-time
summertime,
employees.
yeah, summertime help, so.
That's what we
Well, he would kind of be more like a private contractor because he'd be providing his own equipment too, right? Am I right, Mr. Jansen? Yeah.
But he can also volunteer his
Would
equipment.
private contractor also be obligated to
just charge
carry appropriate insurance?
$1 too.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, there's lots.
Yeah, I didn't hear what you said, sir.
It's just a
Excuse me.
suggestion.
Randy just-
Wait, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what
I'm
you said.
sorry, I spoke out of turn.
That's all right, go ahead.
I like the idea in some way of exploring, because I myself, I just counted it up while he was talking. I think I do anywhere from 6 to 10 miles of my own. And if I see a neighbor, you know, I do custom work for a neighbor, I'll just go by and I'll mow his ditches.
And I think
And I
what
do
most
that
of our
as a
farmers
courtesy.
do.
Yeah. You see it a lot.
I've not explored the liability issue of that, but I'm thinking like if there would be a subcontract that would allow you to be covered under the county's policy. I don't know if that there's a way to do that.
See, that would have to really get detailed, because then what happens if you hit this enormous rock and break your mower, then who's gonna pick up those pieces?
Yeah.
I mean, that would really have to be thought out. Am I right?
I'm thinking more of a passing car goes by and gets hit by a rock.
Yes.
Well, there you go, that too.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Jesse, do you have anything else? Okay. We'll give you a call later, thank you. I think Bud's here. I think I've seen him out there.
Finally. Make sure. Good job, Tom. They are. A little commentary, but. I'll let you get out to you. Yeah.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
How are ya?
Fine.
Good. What you got?
Well, we just gotta let Leon take it over first.
Okay, we'll let Leon do it.
I think, let's back up here a little bit. I'm gonna hand out a revised cost estimate before we go to the next step, to make sure everybody's still on board.
Okay, great.
And again, until we get into some final plans,
Oh.
we're gonna, these are still gonna
You have
go
another
up
one,
and down.
Brad?
Yes. And I've seen a lot of cost estimates in our files, some over 2 million, down to $1.8 million, $1.7 million. So they're all over the board, so I had Randy go through, and again, this is based on some preliminary site plans right now. And the big number that I'm seeing in here that is kind of leading the pack of our costs is the concrete retaining walls. And Randy's using $1,000 per cubic yard for construction cost. It's probably more like $550 or $600. So you can see right there, you can shave $100,000, $200,000 off this estimate pretty quickly. And once we get into final design, we're gonna refine what the final layout is, and that'll dictate probably the cost of this project. Now this number, this $2 million number, does include the building we just bid.
Okay.
So I thought I'd start off with that. And then basically we're back to the direction you want to proceed on this existing project. It does have all the heated floor system in it. We did some research on that. I talked to the contractor. There'd be about a 2 or 3, maybe a $4,000 savings if we went to the above with the tubes. But it's not as efficient. You're gonna find this floor heat is probably the most efficient you're gonna have once it's installed.
And you said about maybe 3,000-4,000?
Savings all would be, but then you're gonna have to run more gas, and you're just shooting heat down, and that floor is never gonna get warm. It's always gonna be cold. You can stand on it, but once you're laying on or doing something. So the heated floor, in my opinion, and my mechanical electrical designers, is the proper way to go for a facility like this.
And I will also ask, and I was doing some phone calling this week to different engineers just on when they give estimates. And I guess last week when you were here, I didn't have the information until you passed it out. So I didn't have the chance to do the study like they did, so I was kind of caught off guard. But my question was to you and the other engineers that I called, when they give estimates, to me, an estimate's an estimate. Am I right?
That is correct.
And that's what I've learned, and I've also learned that even after the estimate is given, there's a whole lot more that goes into giving the estimate, and the same way then when you get the bid, you have the actual cost.
That was correct.
So, when I see that there's a little difference here, price in the estimate, realizing that it was just an estimate, it really does not alarm me that much, and that we're also on phase 1. So, and I'm also thinking that, like you just said, you know, some of these costs and stuff are actually a little higher projected, so that you could justify some of the difference here and there.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't have any contingencies built in this estimate, and this is an estimate we had on file, so we used it for this bid opening. If I would've taken more time, I probably would've added some contingencies in there, probably 10%, maybe 15% at this time, which would have been another $20,000 to $25,000 to what our estimate number was. And, I think the biggest number was on the foundation. I don't know where these numbers come from, but there's also a concrete frost wall that goes all the way around this building. It's not just footings for the metal building, there's a concrete frost wall. I don't know if that number might have got left out in our number. It's in the bid.
Around the 36 by 36 building.
Yes. And it's strictly to keep heat and cold from penetrating underneath the metal building.
I guess I'd like to address the commission before we go too much farther, and that is, this building here that's the proposed shop, I don't expect my employees to be using that every day. I don't expect that to happen. And then, as you see, even in this, I don't have mine in my briefcase here, but I think the actual building cost on that was like 60,000, 64,000, somewhere in there. What it said on, maybe that was on Davy's bid or the other bid.
64,000.
64,000 was on somewhere right in there. It was either
Yeah,
our company, Nelson's,
okay,
or,
so it's on the pre-engineered metal building?
yeah,
Okay, that is on the Nelson Flowers, is 64,000?
yeah, somewhere in there.
Yes.
What I'm getting at is when you look at reality of what we want in here, we're wanting a place that possibility to store things or possibly to work on things. Hope we don't have to work on things every day if we got problems that way. So I see you have a proposed shop alternate down here of a 40 by 60 building. I don't know if that would let a truck and a trailer in, because a 50-foot trailer wouldn't.
It wouldn't, I estimated about 70 foot for cabin trailer.
And I guess we really need to tell this gentleman what we want to be with in order to, what we want. I mean, that's where I'm thinking. And as far as this office down here is proposed because we can't get up here while the construction's going on and demolition's going on. So, but right up there is where we need to be when we're at the end of this project. An office needs to be right off the side of it. At least 8 out of 10 of the places that we've been either has an office in the building or right beside the building, so that the employees are right up there with the floor. So I just want to caution the commission of where we want to be when this job is done. I don't want my office down here, and every time the guys are, as you can see, the sidewalk and stairs having to run up there. I'm just thinking that maybe this building down here, 40 by 60, even if we have to go to 70 to get a truck in, I don't know about what the length is, but something to that effect serves us. We're not spending. I'd rather spend the money over here where the big building is than down on an office myself. That's my feelings. So
the reason the office is down there, and that's going to be the office to begin with, is because of the disability association. We have to provide access to it. And I'm afraid if we had an office up in the transfer station itself, we couldn't get the people. We haven't had that problem yet, but there's always the one time that will happen, and then we'll be in trouble if we don't have access to it by.
I don't think you and I visited a building site anywhere, but
right.
that we couldn't push a wheelchair
right.
into.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
but
all it means is a little more dirt work around it and level it off so that they can get there.
Right. Yeah. If it's outside the building, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But if not inside the transfer station building itself.
Right. The new Harvey County is right inside, and you walk right out on the same floor.
Right.
But that's a 120 building by 120, I think,
yeah.
or something.
Yeah. It's
plenty of big building to accommodate that.
way bigger than what we have designed for what we're doing.
Right.
So the bad thing that we have going on right now is we have to have some place to be able to operate out of while the old building is being tore down to build the new big building, and that's why this was designed this way,
And I have to say, all this time, all these months and stuff, we beat this horse really bad. So I guess I don't understand. And as far as the trucks going inside, is that really necessary to have those trucks inside? I mean, it's nice, I got it, but is it necessary to have those trailers
What we do
inside?
down there, with our trailers and trucks and stuff, that building would be big enough. We've already discussed that, you know. Changing tires, welding, if we have to weld on a trailer or anything, it's big enough. Yeah, you're not gonna get it in and get the doors closed, but if, you know, if it's a north wind, the drive-through, you're gonna drive in, shut the north door, and that's gonna help protect you from the cold and stuff. South wind do just the opposite, you know. If you get the nose in, do your welding, whatever you gotta do, you get put in, change tires, grease. But if it has something like brake job or something else, it goes someplace else to get that done. We don't do that. That's done usually by Road and Bridge, and so it goes up to them, and they work on that. So anything that needs to be done,
That you do normally?
yeah, that we normally do, oil changes and stuff, that, you know, that the thing of it is it was in a budget that we could handle. You know, that's the whole thing that I'm trying to work for, is to get something. I mean, I'm not, if there was some way we could redo the old one and still haul trash and everything, that'd be fine, but I don't know how long the building would stay. And say, just off the top of his head, you know, told us how long it would last, and that was just an estimate. And so, yeah, you could fix the floor, and you know, which would be fine, but that's why we're where we're at now.
So you think this building up here that's proposed with the office on the side, and I know that gets the employees out of the transfer station itself so they can eat a lunch decently?
Yeah, but that would be the main office, like I said the other day, you know. It would not have a main office in the transfer station building itself. That office would be for the ticket, the scale, deal to print the tickets and stuff, and have a restroom for the employees, you know, in it. The main office for paying the bills, doing the money and stuff, and I'm like Randy, I'd love to have it attached to the building if it would be possible, but the way we're doing, having to do this, I don't know where we can go with it, really.
You can have a portable shed brought in and operate out of for 6 months while the construction's going on too. You can do it that way too. It's just whatever the commission wants to decide on which way we want to go here. Is this 40 by 60? Have you looked at any kind of cost on bare minimum on that?
No, I had talked to the contractor, and he felt comfortable that he could enlarge that existing structure to about 40 by 60 for the same price. The problem is we can't do it because of that electrical line. You're gonna be getting into our future retaining wall that's coming off the new building. We have to move the building.
So right now you have you don't have anybody moving that electric line. You're going to leave it.
We were told by the city that cannot be moved, although in 2 years it's gonna be obsolete, so I'm saying, why can't we go overhead temporary for 2 years? So.
Could we leave it the same width and go longer?
Okay. I don't know what
Is that workable with the
On the same site? Well, then,
on the same site or real close to
that
that?
electric line right there.
I'm just, you know, I'm
You
just
see that?
wondering, because I mean, I talk to all these people that build steel buildings, and they say your most economical way is narrower and longer.
I think we're gonna get into some grade issues. Randy, you did the grading plan on this, if you'd help.
We can't go to the east at all because we'll get too steep coming off of that road. And we have to be at a certain elevation in order to run sewer and stuff. We can't go to, and my directions may be wrong, but to the south we can't go because you're gonna run into
The
the
existing
building. And so the north, I mean, there's an amount of distance we could go there. I'm trying to remember how steep that is currently. But the electrical line was why we did one. I mean, every time we turned in another direction, we kind of had a hindrance that paused us. If we go where we just kind of represented a 40 by 60, just so you guys could see what size and a potential, we'd have to relocate gas line is one of the main reasons we didn't go in that area originally. So.
There would be no gas line to this after.
Yeah, and I think we've learned since then. I'm not sure that you guys are using the gas line that's currently
No,
there.
it's not being used. Yeah, it hasn't been used.
And that's one of those where we probably didn't know preliminarily. Wasn't part of the original conversation. So when I was looking at putting it where in that exact location, that was one of the things I seen was that gas line concerned me.
Mr. Goldstein, do you have a question?
I do.
Okay.
Back to the heated heated floor. Had an opportunity to visit with a businessman this past week that has a similar size building. Been in it about, I think about 10 years. Did go with the heated floor, but I mean, they do heavy mechanics. I mean, they don't do cars, they do equipment. And so he determined at the time that they were gonna do heated floors. I tried to ask him, was it cost effective? And he said, well, it's nice for my employees now, but it's not cost effective because it is not on demand. He said that thing has to be turned on 4 hours or more before they come to work to do any good. He said he gets far more efficient heat from the radiant heat from above, and he pushes it down onto the floor with several large fans. And he said he feels like that gives his employees as much or more comfort than that heated floor. Plus, that's on demand. I turn it off, I'm leaving. And it didn't sound like it was a big cost, but I asked him, and that was a pretty good cost that he put in there, and he did it himself. And so, I'm thinking, yeah, we do some things on the floor, but we're not all day long. And so, my thought is, after talking to what I consider to be an expert, we're far better off with being able to supply on-demand heat and push it down, rather than having water circulate through our floors all the time.
And I think that's very true. I agree with you 100% there, because it is based on, you can't just turn it on.
Another thing he brought up, and he says it worries him to death now that he's been that many years. He said, if I get a leak, he said, just because water came up on the floor down here, might mean the leak's at the other end of the building. Yeah. And he says, what am I going to do? He says, I got a little concerned about that.
Yes.
So what effect if we went with the other type of heat would that affect?
Well,
that would be less.
the contractor indicated a $3,000 to $5,000 savings. But then we'd have to heat and cool the bathroom and office space separately. And I just have to get in and talk to my mechanical electrical firm and see what their thoughts are. Whether we go with a wall unit, it's not that big of a space, but still something we'd have to look at, because we don't want the bathroom freezing.
I mean, in the end, it comes down to dollars, and we knew kind of from the start what we were hoping this would come in at. And like I said last week, I'm afraid if we're way over on this, or the next phase we're going to be way over, and on down the road. Not to say that we won't, but there's some real cost restraints I think we have to realize potentially.
If we save that $3,000 and go to the other type of heat, what does that affect the bids?
Yeah, well,
affect
just
the bids at all?
top of my head, I'd say you'd be about the same number, because you gotta do something with the office and the bathroom.
Okay.
I mean, that could be some type of small
But I think
portable type heaters.
what Kent and I are saying is, we don't expect our employees to be there every day, 8 hours a day, working in that building.
Right, I don't either.
Because I would see that thing, most time you will be shut off until you do have problems in the building.
Right.
So,
Or
I'm
it
sorry.
should be. Go-
I'm sorry.
That's all I'm saying, is that's what I don't expect our employees to be there in that building very much. That's what I see.
I'm hoping we're not, because
Well,
if we are, like you said,
we
we've
got
got
troubles.
bigger problems.
Now, I've always been under the concept in a home that you're by far more cost effective when you turn the heat on to set it at a temperature and leave it alone, rather than go in a cold building, turn it on, then you gotta wait for so long till it gets warm, and it's nice and warm, then you shut it off and you leave, that actually you're killing yourself doing that. Is that any truth to that at all?
That's the way my house works. I mean, some of us like it cold, some like it hot in the house, and yeah, I mean, our electric bills, gas bills go up and down depending on who's messing with the thermostat. That's the way it is.
So,
But, this radiant heat, people tell me they're not that expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't gone out and priced it.
2 heaters about 50.
But I mean, you're basically talking, what, a single tube running down the middle of the building? And then some way to push the air down.
Again, all I did is ask the contractor who's the low bidder, take a look at that, and what can we say? Right.
Yeah.
so the bottom line is that at worst, or best, the bids would just come in a little bit less if we required this better,
Right.
this other type of floor heat.
We'd have to go back and I'd have to come up with some kind of a plan for him to develop, which would be a couple $1,000, I assume, for the mechanical, electrical. And we do it by change order. Go ahead and award this contract to him so we can keep this project moving, because we got a few steps and he's got quite a bit of things to get done before he starts on the heating element of this project. And then we'll come up and do a change order, which would come to you guys for approval.
So you're not gonna save anything anyway, but you're not gonna pay extra engineering to make the change. But, you know, if it's a better floor
I don't know,
heat,
it's hard for me to question the engineer. I just was, talking to the individual. He seemed to think it would be a lot larger cost savings.
Again,
I can see, water line breaks, then you've got to tear up your floor and stuff. I mean, I was just going by what I was told, that it was more cost effective and stuff, and that's why I, brought it to you guys.
and that was one person. I wonder how many other people we could talk to get kind of a little more input. I don't know who all has stuff like that.
Well, I liked what this guy said, because he was totally involved with the construction process himself.
I know I helped put one of those in once at my prior employer, in the shop, and it was working great when I left there. They turned it on and the shop was warm all the time. You could work in there in shirt sleeves. You could go in there at any time and go in shirt sleeves. Of course, they were using their waste oil to heat the water with, which made it even more cost effective.
Right.
So, but yeah, at that time, and this was heavy equipment. I mean, this was heavy equipment that they were working on and stuff.
So if we were to go ahead and approve the lowest bidder today, that heat, working out the heat could come later, am I right?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and
That would not.
get a plan developed so we know what he's gonna be, give us a price on it.
Because you'd have to do that no matter who we awarded it to.
That's correct.
Okay.
Couldn't they give us another cost estimate with the changes that we've talked about, and then we approve it?
But the only thing is, we've been working on this, do we
Well,
want to keep stalling around?
And we would need to develop a plan so we know what he's bidding. Have a mechanical firm put that together. We got 60 days that they can hold this bid. And it was bid on the 19th of November, so we're approaching the first 30-day time frame.
Yeah, but what would change on mechanical? All you said, we're taking the heat out of the floor.
Well, I know, but he's gotta have some kind of a detail, some kind of a spec on what type of radiant heat he's bidding. If it's gas fired, we have to run a gas main.
There's no radiant heat bid in this at all?
Service is $500 to, that's what you're looking at for a service. And if it's within 150 foot, then you got your monthly cost.
That's what they cost of gas.
And so, I'm just, and like you said, you got so many things over there, the electrical line, I know that's been an issue, but I didn't know anything was moved because of it. I thought we were gonna have to pay to move it, that's what I thought, but even though it's gonna be dead in 2 years, what you were talking about.
We're still in hopes that we can make the ramp work with it staying there.
Yeah, okay.
And we're gonna try to get some exploratory work done to find we need to know exactly where it is and exactly how deep it is, because it's based on the estimates the city has given us of, well, it's a high power transmission line, it should be 5 to 6 foot deep, gets very close to the.
Where your footings is gonna be.
Yeah, it gets very close to, it could work or it could not work. The 5 foot kind of gets us fairly steep and there's adjustments that can be made. The 6 foot works just fine. So we need to know exactly where it is and then we can make the determination what needs to be done with it.
Okay.
I guess I'm in favor of looking at a building and figuring out how we can move the office up to the building. That's sort of where I'm at with this.
You don't want to proceed with the way it is now?
I'm just looking ahead in the future.
Well, I thought that's what we spent the last year doing, trying to come up with plans and, I mean.
We didn't know what the cost was gonna be either.
Well,
And I think you can get a cheaper cost out of this whole deal.
I just think we're wasting so much time, the engineer's time. I mean, this is phase 1.
That's what,
Can we not move?
that's what concerns me. An overrun on phase one, what does that mean about phase two? And I think we need to, as a commission, we sat here and we looked at the very first initial estimates, thinking that we could pay that phase one out of pocket.
And
If we determine that we can't, it's gonna take some time to look at financing options.
Well, if we keep having engineering costs and keep starting all over and over and over, what are we doing? I mean, we're wasting money.
Well,
We
I
wasted
don't,
$20-some thousand on the first engineering firm and then blew that all away. I mean,
What are you talking
well, we had the other engineering firm and then we decided not even to go with them and we had to pay them $20-some thousand for all the services that they've done.
What are you talking about?
What was the name, Tina, of that engineering firm?
Are you talking about BG?
Yes.
Consultants?
Emporia, was it? Was that
about?
what
Oh, okay.
they worked for us for months and months and months and months and designed everything and everything was, and then all of a sudden,
That was just trying to find a site. That was not even, we weren't even
That-
getting to this.
that was a little more than even, they worked like a dog. And so we ultimately lost money on that, so start over again. Hope that floor doesn't fall in, till then.
Does, at your proposed alternate site, with that site, does that make any difference than where you're at back there? What difference does that make, moving the site, moving the building site?
As far as changes,
Well, if you're gonna wanna look at the office up by the transfer station, you don't need a 40 by 70, do you? How wide does it need to be to just put your trucks in?
We don't need one that wide, if all we
I
need
mean,
is the length, we
You
just need
know,
it.
and
Same
the reason to move it where it's at on that proposed site plan is to get it away from that building that we gotta tear down. And your idea, maybe you set up a temp trailer or something down there for do your bookkeeping or something, other people
Right.
look at that.
right.
Which is gonna back us up probably 30, 60 days. I'll get a hold of my architect and mechanical electrical and say, all right guys, we need to put this in high gear, what are we looking for as cost? And, cause we're still just now starting the preliminary phase of the next phase of the actual transfer station. And we've kinda stopped on it now just because of what we're doing here.
Right.
I guess, we're just needing direction.
Do you believe, with what you know, that it's possible to save money by moving this? Even with your cost?
Depends how big we make the building.
I think it'd be very comparable. I think you'd wind up, well, you might get a little bit bigger building for the same cost, just because it's a little more cookie cutter standard size. Otherwise, you're gaining a minimal amount of square footage, and for pretty much, I don't think the cost total budget's gonna change very much.
And Bud, do you think you can work very well with the way it's proposed?
Well, we've already, just about decided that. We've talked it over, when it came in with the 36 by 36 and an office, but, if you wanna put the office by the main building itself, that's fine, we can work out of it's up to you guys.
Getting tired of it, huh? Well, what's the commission want to do? I say move on, let's move with it. I mean, you're dickering over just a few short $1,000.
Well, I think it may be more than that. So could you look at those cost estimates again on the heating? And like I said, I don't know if we can go any longer or any narrower and fit in to where the utilities are, or we can't. If we can't, we can't.
Are you thinking of leaving the building where it's at,
Yeah,
where it's proposed now, trying to
I
make it?
mean, do we have, we don't have much option on that, do we?
I mean, if you guys wanna put, just the shop area up and rent us an office building, till we get something built on the main building, if because I'm like Randy though. What we've seen, the ones connected to it is ideal. I mean, we've seen a lot of buildings that we'd all really love to have.
Yeah. And all the offices have been there.
Yes, and our space is confined, you know, and stuff, and this is something, I agree, you know, the guys would be walking a little bit over and stuff, you know, but we were determined to make it work, you know, because we need to make it work that way to keep the people who come in to pay on the level. You know, not coming back into the transfer station and
Right.
getting away with the trash.
Right.
We need to keep them out of there. You know, that's our whole purpose, is to keep the public out and the safety and everything. And so, you know, that was the purpose of this being built first, to get us over there so we can start with the big building and then still have a place to be able to have the people come in, pay the bills, not be in everybody's way. Person, but you know, if we want to change and go to just a shop area then, and then having the office connected to the main building, you know, I'll go with whatever you guys want to go with. But this one here, we had already, you know, the guys and I, you know, I've listened to them, I've listened to you guys, I've paid attention to what I saw when I went and looked. I'm trying to make it work and be ideal for the public, for us, and the budget. That's what I'm trying to do, you know.
And we've already brought the cost down by half,
So
basically,
I
from
just,
what we
you know,
originally started.
whatever, I'm not wanting anybody to, you know, I'm not gonna feud over it. Whatever you guys want, I'll work with it. You know, I'm just trying to look out and, cause we're running out of time. We're definitely running out of time.
It sounds like you're wanting to look at a pretty major change, so you're probably looking to just reject it or not accepting any bids, and we'll rebid the project.
Why don't, here's my thought, why don't we move forward? But we're gonna have to keep, you know, we're gonna have to keep a handle on this, and like you said, the use of the change orders, it looks like is the best alternative.
Well, if you wanna leave the building where it's at, if we move the building,
Right.
take the office completely out.
Right, I'm talking about just the way we are.
And then you were asking, I mean, that was our MEP's response to change in heating was from 3 to 5,000 was the difference between the heated floor and the 2P overhead. I think when they say it's the most cost effective, I'm hearing you guys say you're probably not going to heat that shop 24/7 every day.
No.
I don't, that probably wasn't presented to the MEP that way. The
Okay.
mechanical engineer.
Yeah,
So that's where when I started listening to you guys talk about you know, if it's not presented apples to apples, then your answers are a little skewed. That's the most cost-effective way to heat that building 24/7, keep it a steady 50 degrees or whatever. Probably that heated floor. If you're talking about kicking the tubes on because these guys are going to work and then walking away, then that also changes a little bit on the bathroom. Probably will need to be insulated now, which would be a SLA.
Or do we take the bathroom and the office completely out of there if they want it next to the new transfer station and just build a shop? Take that wing off, then now you're talking a substantial reduction in price on that office space bathroom. But again, are we?
You're still gonna go up here to the other building.
Right.
It's still gonna.
right, I mean, the cost is gonna be there one way or
Yeah.
another.
Well, there we have it. Well, if we rent a small trailer and it has a bathroom inside, it would be fine. But if we're definitely going to have an office, and we're going to have a bathroom.
Well, what did the Johnny on the spot cost?
Oh yeah,
A Johnny on the spot.
$265 a month,
mean-
because we had a sewer line go out down there. We had to rent it.
Those
for
are
an
cold.
They're 135 for that.
You could
Get it for the
You could probably
cemetery.
plug in a heater.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
still.
all these options.
Those guys don't care whether it's cold or not.
Oh yes.
Well, and you're exactly right. I mean, we're moving some costs around, but we're taking care of what we need to do. And by putting, but I'm wondering, with what I see here, is where would the office go? Is this?
Well, I would assume it would go about where those stairs that we show going up, and this is just me, but then we'll have those stairs with inside the building. The general public doesn't need to go up them stairs.
No, that would just be the stairs.
In order to try and keep this thing low enough that we can do ADA
You
accessibility.
did that, and then you wouldn't change your ADA setting, and location.
Yeah, this building's kind of fixed based on grades and everything.
Okay.
So we take this 20 by 20 off, and that's gonna be a substantial reduction, because I heard little eyebrows and the roof lines and stuff were fairly expensive on that. Maybe bump that to, well, again, we're changing plans so much, go to 40 by 40.
Well, I don't see where we need to go any wider with it. I mean,
Just
we'll
leave it
have
as
room-
is, 36 by
We'll have
36.
room for our tool bin in there and our workspace beside. If you wanna make it a little bit longer, you can make it a 30 by 50, I guess, or, I don't know.
And maybe incorporate a little bathroom in there, because that's.
Now,
wise.
can this building be extended to the south without the office?
We've got the existing corner of the transfer.
And narrow it up, you know. Take it from a 36 by 36 to, I mean,
20 by,
without messing up the whole scenario of where we're at right now with this bid. You know, without having to go back and redraw everything.
see, those are pretty substantial changes we're talking.
Yes.
They are. That's, there's no sense building that 20 by 20 office if you're gonna want another one up there next to the new transfer station. That's,
And what's the distance gonna be between the two new buildings, the office and the transfer station, basically? I never have measured that.
What distance?
we're
From
coming out
here
there,
to here.
from the office going up the sidewalk. You're probably 20 feet, 30 feet.
Yeah, it's about 30 feet. Okay, so that's 20 scale.
Okay, so, Mr. Becker, am I understanding that you're ready to move on with this and then just detail some of these finer points as we go along?
We're gonna have to, because we've gotta get the cost down.
We gotta get the project started.
Absolutely, but we've gotta get the cost down.
You wanna make a motion, or you want to continue to discuss it?
Well, I mean, we're gonna spend a lot more on engineering if we do all of these changes, and so maybe, it sounds to me like the change order way of doing things is the most cost, would give us the most cost savings. I mean, it's gonna require the commission to be a little bit more hands-on with it, you know, and a few more visits and a few things like that, but, you know, in the meantime, Tina's gonna have to start visiting some financing options down the road too, visiting with our bond guys and such like that, so. I mean, at this point, if we approved the bid, when would we look at it? And depending on the weather, when would we look at a start?
Contract documents, give them 10 days after you give notice of award. We gotta take a couple of weeks to get contracts and bonds and everything put together. They have 10 days to get that back to you, so you're probably talking 30 days for actual notice to proceed with the construction, which then they have another 5 or 10 days to start.
Now, with current weather, I tell you, they could do work. You're not talking a lot of dirt work. It's a small, manageable site. While it's slow and cumbersome, I would have to assume these guys were figuring that no bigger this building's going to be, that they're going to work in this weather.
Yeah, they had 90 days in our contracts to build this thing, and nobody said one thing that they couldn't do it.
Okay.
So are you
Building
ready to
6
move
weeks
on,
out,
or what?
Yeah, on order.
I mean, yeah, I'm not saying they're going to start January 15th, but
Right.
I would tell you that if it was mid-February and you got the weather we're having right now, I don't see them not doing work. It's doable. Not the most cost-effective, but I would assume they were planning on busting this out before spring contracts start turning loose, so.
So do I have a motion to go one way or the other?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to accept the bid from Nelson Files LLC. Contingent on change orders to be determined in an amount of $297,002.15.
Do I have a second?
With the change of, adding the change in the office, or doing, just leaving it like it is?
Leave it like it is.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll second it.
I mean, the change orders are gonna determine that down the road.
No, the building's gonna be just like it is. It would
But
be-
the building is.
Yeah, the building's gonna be just like it is, yeah.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor in a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, if I could go ahead and have you sign 4 copies, so I can get the contract document started. Now, let me make you understand, we did not wanna look at moving that 20 by 20 office off this building now. Leave it
No,
where it's at.
because that's gonna be another can of worms to do, and we don't know where that's gonna come in.
The only change that we're gonna be looking at then would be going to the radiant heat.
Just wanna verify it right there, right?
With the change order, yeah.
Where it says fine.
Okay.
Thinking, I assumed that bathroom was not insulated.
Well, that, it should be insulated, it just needs some kind of heating source, so. We'll look at the heating for the whole building, how it's gonna be handled.
Okay.
If you're gonna have an office there and you're gonna have, gas, or you have furnace, so you should be running with that too, but then that's cost-wise too, so.
These go to you, or Tina, these go to you?
Yeah, what I'll do is,
Is this yours?
yeah, I will take those back and start putting specification books together for the contract documents. And then the next step will be for him to start putting his bonds and everything together, and his insurance and everything. So if I could get those copies, or she gonna notarize it?
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
think there's not.
do you want it dated today?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you guys.
We'll get moving on it.
It's just, one of these things.
Can you leave one copy, like make it, have my staff make a copy
Yes,
for?
yes. Thank you.
Yes,
Have a good day.
We'll be in touch.
you bet.
Anybody need anything from me? I don't have anything else.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you, buddy.
Just wanna make sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so is Deidre out there?
She's up.
She left?
No, she's up.
She's out there, okay.
Well,
You can sit right
you
there,
could
that's
maybe
fine.
sit here and I could sit here.
Who's gonna do the talking?
Well, he's gonna do most of the talking, so should
He
he
can sit
sit
there,
here?
no, he's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Here's
I'm just
information
doing-
that Deidre sent.
I'm just doing the,
Here you go.
kind of the introduction of it, and then Lloyd's gonna answer any questions. Actually, it was about a year ago, we were needing 2 computers, and we did get one because one of them did actually crash. And so, it's time that now we need to replace 2 computers, 2 more computers. So I asked Lloyd to prepare bids for us, cause coming in January, our computers, one of them is 6 years old already. That was the one that we should have replaced last year. And then we have 2 computers coming up that, outdate, well, they're 5 years old in January. And so they're kind of
starting to cause problems. Usually in my budget, I've always written in that we'd change out computers every 3 years, because that's kind of the general life of this type of computer. So I need 2 computers, and if you'll look at that page, you see the quotes. My thought, we've had HPs, and we've always got stretched the life of them. So I would like to know with the HP SD Elite 1-800, and Lloyd can tell you that.
I wrote on this, and I don't know, I kind of had it mentioned in last week's too. This is the first time you're seeing this right now.
What did you give us last week?
Last week I gave you the 2 bids of the Dell and the HP.
We kind of went out, these are all-in-one form factor, so it's not like a standalone PC, but it's got the monitor and the PC all built in. They're a little pricier, but you're not buying a monitor too. The one way we've approached this in the past is when we're trying to get 3 to 5 years life out of what we can, and if it's working okay, we'll keep it. These had Windows 8 operating system, and we've updated that. And we had Windows 7 operating system, and updated that. We're looking at, and I've mentioned this in some of the other things, we're looking at that January 2020 date for Windows 7 and Windows 8 all being obsolescence for support. So some of the units we're running now weren't built for Windows 10, but they're running Windows 10. That's working okay. I'm seeing a few problems with these besides just they're getting a little long in the tooth. They keep updating their applications, take more resources. When we've been quoting these, and I did 2 sets here, we've gone through CDWG through our state contracts. There's like 16 state pre-bid contracts we can pick from. And I've kind of looked on just like Staples and Walmart and things, see what comparison, and they've come in lower. We've usually been trying to do i7s on the processor, because we're going to get more life out of it down the road, because we've got a stronger processor. And the big thing that's been helping with performance lately is switching to solid state drives. So both of those add a premium to it. The other quotes I have here were the i5s with a standard hard drive. Like I said, they may not last as long, but for like a couple hundred more, you're going to get a little bit more performance out of it, but get a little stronger resources now. So if we're still going that route with, let's not just dump them when they're out of warranty at 3 years and try and get a few more years out of them, I'd lean more to the i7s with the solid state drives. The other thing is we've had real good luck with the HPs. The Dells, I know I've had issues some other places where we've had to replace stuff more frequently than we have on HPs. On these quotes, the Lenovo's came in low, so I know she likes the HPs just because we're just not messing with them, so that's a good thing there too. So I think that's what our strategy was for it. So that makes sense. Questions?
And this would come out of capital outlay. Right now, we've actually spent 1.64% of our capital outlay right now. If we would purchase these with our security system, once we purchase that, and then we did get a insurance card scanner, we would still have $73,554 in our capital outlay with the purchase of this.
Will you be installing Office 365 in this?
No.
No?
No, we'll be doing Office. Probably towards the end, not 2019, we'll be looking at, we're going to switch over for Exchange. We've got the option of either hosting it in-house with Exchange, or going to Office 365 and hosting it off-site. Our Exchange server goes out of support in 2020, so 2019 is going to be a decision for that. We've got, with the virtual servers, we've got the hardware resources, so we can run Exchange and continue to do that. So, I like Office 365, it's a subscription base. The breakpoint on cost is about 4 years. So if you're buying Office 2016, 2019, about 4 years into the subscription, you'll break even for Office 365. The nice thing with Office 365 is you get the
It's pretty
reps.
superior.
Well, you get the new reps as you go along. So we've really been looking at that hard. For the last 2 years, we've discussed it in the tech meeting about what's going to be our best bet to go in the next year. So Office 365 makes a lot of things easier for, especially document sharing and some things like that. But you're going to have that ongoing subscription cost of about $12 a seat per user.
So when you go to that though, these new ones will handle it easily.
Oh, yeah. Actually, you're getting Office now, but that kind of would just go away. Or you can continue to use it and connect into your Office 365. So if you buy those Office 365 subscriptions, then you get the, Office 2019 done now. And whatever else they come along with new versions.
But I understand the extra expense, and I also understand what she's saying about HP. That is a very good computer. But I'm just gonna ask why, at this time, if you're gonna buy a new one, realizing the benefits of the Office 65 and how much easier it is to work with, just install it. Why would we not?
Because we don't have that working with our Exchange server, existing Exchange server now.
So you have to do quite a bit of, so you can't get it, is what you're saying.
We could get it, but it wouldn't incorporate with our existing system yet, because we'll be changing that next year. So you're using Exchange server, it's 2010 Exchange server for your email right now, and it goes out of support in January.
That's old.
Yeah.
Old.
Yeah, it's
Older than me.
It's
Well, and we weren't even on 10 till very
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
So.
That's just the Office piece, so just Word, Excel, and all that kind of stuff.
And you want
It's still,
these.
Yes.
it's still supported. I mean, we're still under support. But yeah, we're looking at that wall out there, not swapping it out.
Okay.
We use Office 365.
I do.
Yeah,
I read it.
we've done that more just in pieces. So
In my bookkeeping itself, I mean, it makes everything so much easier. Anyway.
I've been leaning towards that. The only issue is you use some control since it's hosted out in the cloud. If the internet's down, then you're not getting to your Word, Excel, and all that. I like it. It's matured a lot in the last 2 years, so by the time we start switching over,
Well, I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with going with the HP. That's what we need to do the best job. IT is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Nothing more frustrating than dealing with a slow, inoperative computer.
And that's what we're experiencing, especially when the state sends us stuff and we try to download their attachments or it directs us for a PDF somewhere. It just spins and spins.
Oh, that's
And I know the billing portion is starting to
and
have.
we're gonna come up on 5 years of the tablets, you guys' tablets, so,
I thought we were already there.
yeah, you're pretty much there.
I just got totally spoiled when I worked at Fort Riley. I mean, it was like, you hit the button and you're there. And anything else I can't really deal with. So I kind of,
So, yeah,
Very
you'll be
patient.
seeing me soon about that too.
okay, so
Can you take some action?
I'll go ahead and make the motion then for the purchase of 2, you said,
Yes.
of the HP SB Elite 1-800 G4 computer at the cost of $1340.46 a piece. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Randy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Mr. Kevin Marler. Howdy. Come on up.
One of those, you guys, and hand it to me, please. How you guys doing this morning?
Good, how are you doing, Kevin?
Not too bad. I'm just reading a little letter here.
Okay.
I'm here today to ask if the county would be willing to assist me financially to attend paramedic school, which begins January 8th of next year. Yes, I have gone through the whole program previously, ending in November of 2017. Circumstances at that time prevented me from challenging and passing the state and national exams, which I can explain if needed. Also, there were some major life events that happened to me while I was in school, and I possibly should have done more to make sure I was ready to go back after those events happened. Last time when I went through the program, I was able to obtain an EIG grant through the state. That helped some with the expenses, but I also had to get other grants and loans to pay for everything. I'm currently repaying what I am required to repay on the EIG grant due to not getting my certification. I am also repaying on my previous student loans that I had received. So in all actuality, the county did not help me financially at all last time I attended paramedic school. That is why I am hoping that you, as a commission, will agree to help me with some of the expenses this time. Yes, I'm going to try and get as much student aid as I can, and I have applied for some other financial assistance, but I'm not sure when I will find out if I will receive any of these monies from the other outlets. I'm truly hoping that you, the commissioners, will agree to help me with this endeavor, not only to help me get my certification, but also be able to help me better serve the citizens of Marion County. I will gladly sign some sort of service agreement or anything like that, if that will help prove to you how committed I am to obtaining this level of certification to help me further my EMS career with Marion County EMS. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'm open to discuss any or answer any questions at this time.
How far along are you on paying the previous obligation back? Do you have it on hand?
The state grant, I'm a year into it. I have about another year left on it. I'm not able to obtain that grant again because they only apply it once per certification.
I do believe that when we got your grant and it was utilized towards your expenses, the county did actually pay approximately $3,000 additional out of the ambulance department budget,
Okay.
not out of the grant funds.
Okay.
So the county
I did
actually
not know that,
pay about I'd have to look at the exact amount, but there was some finances put there, just so if you weren't aware.
Yeah. I was
Mhm.
And the printouts I gave you is just the spring semester for tuition, and then a list of the books that I would be needing. None of the books that I had last time carried over to the new time because they got new editions and everything. So that's part of it. Yeah.
Well, I certainly do appreciate your eagerness and willing to go back and try again. I certainly do appreciate that. Personally, this is something that I'd like to think about myself, because I have to think about what kind of standard we're setting and how it's going to affect other people and how we would have to, well, all the things we'd have to take into consideration to do this. And right offhand, I didn't know it was coming, so I didn't prepare
Yeah.
anything. So I would need a little bit of time.
Not being able to get that state grant again like I was hoping for, kind of.
Mhm.
But it's,
I
you know,
understand.
came from thing.
Where are you gonna take this out?
It's through Hutchinson.
Through Hutch?
College. Yeah.
So you've got commuting cost. How long is the program?
17 to 18 months. It'll end in May of 2001.
Has there been any precedent where we've done something like this before for someone that's trying to get a paramedic?
We had paid some costs for, I think, another individual as well. I think we had two, it was Kevin and one other person, I believe, that we had paid some costs toward. I'd have to look and see exactly how that all panned out. But they both had the state grant, which we applied for, or was applied for and received by the county, and then it was utilized to pay portions of their tuition and books. But then going above and beyond, I don't know where the other individual ended up or how. But we do have the ability to do a service agreement where they would agree to work for the county for a certain period of time. Those agreements have been developed and have been used for some of the EMT level classes.
That was my concern because, you know,
So that's certainly possible.
Well, it'll be interesting to see all that, and see how all that works. I think on most of them, we do absorb some costs, whether it be motel expenses or meals or travel, and over the course of that type of training, that add up to a lot. I've seen it over the years of people that were going for it and got the grants.
Well, typically, if you're paying for lodging for someone, it's not for their education usually, unless it's for going up to test, do a practical exam or something like that, but we pay the expenses related to the education itself. Sometimes, if you have lodging for EMS, it's been for certain people going to the EMS conference, basically, where they have educational offerings at a conference. So that's a little bit different.
Or like maybe different classes, maybe like the coordinator instructor class or something like that, where they have to go further away or something like that.
I don't know. I don't recall doing hotel, but
I thought I'd seen it, but
I think paramedics brings in a whole new field. We looked at for EMTs, because that's what we was shooting for before. Now we're shooting for paramedics and EMTs too. I mean, both of them, but it does bring in a whole different scope of what we want to be, where we want to be with it.
so
I don't mind setting, I don't know, how long you got to do this?
Classes start January 8th, but I actually have till the end of the semester to pay for tuition and books, but I'd like to have it paid for as soon as possible. That way I don't have to worry about it then, because if you don't have your bill paid, you can't go on to the next semester.
So this first semester is 3,100?
Yeah.
Second semester, what's it?
I won't know until it gets closer to the second semester. This should be the most expensive semester, I believe, because it's 16 credit hours. And then after this, I don't think there'll be much for books. Like everything pretty much comes in this first.
Just 2 semesters or more?
4 semesters.
4 semesters.
so does that mean that each semester you'd come to us and
Not necessarily. Like I said, right now I'm waiting to see what I'll be able to get back from financial aid and student loans through the school. I was also planning on possibly using some other monies that I have access to. I don't know how much I've got access to, but any amount would definitely help.
So Tina, could you provide me with a little bit more information on stuff, if we tabled it for a week or something?
sure.
would that suffice 1 week?
Yeah.
I'd like to do that.
Thank you. Yep.
You bet.
All right, thanks
Thank
guys.
you.
Have a good day.
Thanks so much.
Flip here. Right.
Commissioners, I don't need anything. I just wanted to stop and wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful New Year in 2019.
Merry
You
Christmas
have a
to you
good day.
also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so next is the redistricting. Before we do that, before we go into the redistricting though, I'm gonna make a little bit of a change. You were not aware, but we did pass to have a resolution to create a position of an administrator and hire one doing that. So we would need you to make up a resolution for that if possible, please.
Okay.
And I did want to bring up just one other thing. Do you mind? Do you mind? Well, okay, so I was doing some research and stuff, and something just did not, and it's on the same subject that we have talked about many times, and that is on the mileage logs, okay? So we have EMS, we just hired an EMS director, and so I was calling around to the different counties to try to put a finger on why we are charging our EMS director, why we are encouraging him or making him make a mileage log.
Do
Anything
you
with-
mean your emergency management director?
Both.
EMS director does.
Yes, he does. Yeah, that's why just as I'm saying.
Okay.
EMS director does a mileage log. Now, we just hired a new AMS director, and he's coming from Great Bend, and they don't require that. and also, in the same token, emergency management. Same, two are the same, okay, I'm talking about both departments, okay? So what I want to bring out to the commission is, I've been reading all the IRS requirements, and I know we talked about it. And, but there's just some pieces that just didn't fit for me. So I got on the phone, I called 17 counties around just to find out who all does make their, those two department heads fill out mileage logs, detailed mileage logs. And not one does. None of them. And I called Butler County, Gary County, Dickinson County, Morris County, Riley County, Chase County, Hardy County. I called Saline County, City of Salina, McPherson County, McPherson City, Great Bend, Sedgwick, Reno, Ottawa, Ellsworth, and Russell. None of them did that. So in some of them it was interesting because I did talk, and I'll just say like, when I talked to Brad Holman at Dickinson County, and he was saying that their county went through the trouble of actually studying the IRS regulations and so on about it, and the determination, and I heard Tina mention this before, that it is a benefit to the employee. And the other counties definitely disagree with that because they're saying that when you have a department head in a safety fashion where they have to be response ready 24/7, that quite frankly, that is not a benefit to the employee, it's a benefit to the county to provide that type of service.
So they're considering those vehicles as safety personnel rather than just their sheriff's office.
And
Is that what
that's
you're
a question,
saying?
I think so, I did not ask that question, but that's the bottom line is what I come to. So then I went in to ask a little bit more, well, do you charge them to use the vehicle? And they said absolutely not. So, I have one guy, and I will tell you, it was, Hardy County, the EMS director, and he knows our EMS people very well. I think we have a relationship with them somehow through Hardy County, and he said, well, thank you so much for the heads up. I know not to apply for a job there. But anyway, the overall comments that I got from all these people, I had talked to directors, I have talked to administrators, I have talked to clerks, I have talked to whoever was knowledgeable or who knew the answer to my questions. And they all said that, you know, we don't do that, it's an encumbersome thing to have those people fill those out, so why would you do it? So I guess my question is, again, why are we doing it? Is it necessary to do it? When they fill up
I'm
with gas,
wondering if they have deemed those in some sort of a policy as emergency, designated emergency vehicles.
It's the only way I can think of that works without any potential risk in terms of the audit.
Because that's what we would have to probably do.
Yeah.
and that is some of the comments that I've heard them say.
Okay,
Yes.
because that has not been done in Marion County.
Okay, and so I'm bringing this up because I'm wondering, and I could continue to call, I could call all 105 counties, but it just seems to me as though we're doing something that is out of the usual, and isn't necessary. And again, like I said, bringing in our new EMS director now, he's going to be doing something that he is not accustomed to, and wanting to know why. And I wonder, do we need to do this? Can we actually change that policy to where we're consistent with others? I mean, is it really terrible to just take that burden? One person had said to me, that's really, you don't want to burden your employees down to do something like, and what's the point? Now, I will tell you, there was one county, and it's Ottawa County. This particular, I can't remember if it was the EMS director or the emergency, I don't know. One of them was caught driving the vehicle off duty and had a fender bender. Lost the privilege of the vehicle. Okay, I got that, you're gonna have, but that person did something from the start they weren't supposed to be doing anyway. So I just think really that we should maybe rethink this, because if nobody else is doing it, then I just don't understand why we have to be doing that. So,
I don't think it had ever come up if you had never had no questions about what was going on, but when you got questions what's going on, well then you got the answers. I mean, just a simple mileage log. It ain't asking nobody to do anything too difficult.
Well, and the IRS standards are pretty clear, but there is an exception for vehicles that are deemed emergency response. But I think that there's probably some sorts of I don't know if there's an action the commission would have to take.
Yeah, it would be a declaration that any of the following vehicles in certain departments would be treated as and declared an emergency response
So it's
vehicle.
not stated directly in the IRS.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was also, some of these people, they were so willing to call, and they were saying, you know, in departments, and I understand this entirely, in departments where you have multiple people driving that vehicle, then that makes a little bit more sense. You know, if somebody does, you know, scrape it or something on the side, you can go back and see who was the last driver or whoever did it or whatever. There's some benefit to it or something, but, you know, if our EMS director or our emergency management director has a scrape, they're the only person that's allowed to drive that vehicle. So we know all who done it. If you see them driving it when they're not supposed to be out of town or on their personal time, then we take action based on that. But personally,
Did you ask those people whether they lived in their headquartered community?
yeah, as a matter of fact, I did, some of them, and they don't. They
Some
don't.
don't,
Some of them
but-
live out of county, quite frankly. Some of their EMS directors live out of county. Yes, absolutely. And they do that. There's actually one county, and I can verify which one it is. I don't know right offhand, but I don't know if it was, but they share. I think it's Ellsworth and Russell. Ellsworth and Russell share their EMS and emergency management program, and so they do go from county to county, stuff like that, yes. So, yeah, that's another thing, so. I certainly would like to move forward and have that changed, the less cumbersome that we can do, and it'll alleviate a lot of headaches and so on, and it's just really worthless. And I want to ask the question, I think when they get gas from the pumps, don't they put mileage in or something? Isn't there something there to where they put mileage in?
I don't know, as I don't go to pumps.
Yeah, see, I don't
So I
either,
can't
but
tell
I
you.
know, that's one of the things that everybody had said, or not everybody, some of them said, you know, when they fill up, you have to put in the mileage, that's the way their pumps are designed. I didn't go look at our pumps either, but I'm almost sure I heard that somewhere. I can check it out. I mean, it's a simple task to do.
I think that's kind of irrelevant. I mean, either we're gonna designate those as emergency response vehicles, and then they fall under the exemption, which is granted to the sheriff's office, or you don't, and then they would fall under the requirement of the IRS to submit the detailed mileage on.
Okay. Well, then I would be prepared to make a motion to change that if that's what we need to do.
Well, I don't know if you need do you have to do that by resolution to
Yeah,
designate
well,
which
I
one?
normally will,
I've
you know.
seen some,
You know, you can do it by policy as well, but I prefer, should we ever be audited on that, and also just have it in the file that we've designated those as emergency response vehicles.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to make a motion if you want to do it.
Yeah.
But you'd still probably have to have
It's still
some
direct me to go
sort
ahead
of
and
a.
prepare the necessary documents to do that.
Then we could approve the resolution.
Just do it that way.
Okay. Well, then I'll go ahead and make a motion to prepare a resolution to change the policy on emergency response vehicles. Is that stated well enough? Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second it, I don't have a problem with it.
Second by Kent, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
This is your day of no, huh?
Well, I don't like things that's not on the, as you told after you sat here in the supervisor or the chairmanship, and you said it's gonna be on the agenda, and then you bring up items that's not on the agenda, so I don't know.
I said what was gonna be on the agenda, sir?
Huh?
What did you say I said was gonna be on the agenda?
Well, they're not on the items. You brought
Right.
one up about the county administrator already, and you threw such a fit earlier this year that we had to have items on the agenda. Now you're breaking your own rules.
I don't remember throwing a fit about having
Oh, yes,
items
you
on the
did.
agenda.
Go back and look on the tape, you'll find it.
Well, you need a break to recompose?
No, yeah, I do, but I've got other stuff I'd like to ask Kevin, or Brad here before we go into the commission redistricting. So,
That's
I'd
a
like
good
to,
word.
yeah, it's a tough word.
So you wanna take time for something else that's not on the agenda? Is that what you think you're about
Well,
to do?
that's exactly what I'm gonna do,
Okay.
because
Well,
he's
you know what? Go
here.
ahead. That's
and
what I did because he was here.
Because, 'cause last week, and when we paid bills, we had close to $18,000 worth of just one bill from our insurance. There was two different amounts of $9,000, I think, apiece. I think Kent brought it up. And it was about a frivolous lawsuit filed by ex-commissioner Roy Lalouette and ex-worker Larry Cushenberry. So,
I would like to ask, who dropped that lawsuit?
The court ordered it. It was never, it was allowed to be filed, as I understand it. And Tina can probably correct me if I'm missing something on that, but and then we immediately contact, whenever something like that occurs, our carrier, because that's obviously what we have insurance protection for in certain instances. And they initiated the representation. It was subsequently it was dismissed by the court because the appropriate filing fees were never paid. It was allowed to be filed, subject to, as I understand it, those fees being subsequently tendered. They never were. So at that point, the judge gave whatever time. I don't know whether he set a deadline or he just determined this is more than long enough. And as I understand it, the email that I got was it's been dismissed because those fees were never paid. The court just from the bench said that's it.
Okay. With that happening, then does the county have the recourse to go back and file a counter lawsuit to try
to reclaim? We can go through, and again, I would probably defer to our legal counsel in that case as to whether, yes, there's always at least the potential to look at those things and see if it wasn't properly pursued, whether there's the potential for reclaiming any of those fees. And I can certainly go ahead and talk to the attorney who was involved in that for us, since he's attorney of record on it, see what options there might be.
Well, I mean, that's just one start. I mean, Tina has time and stuff gathering for information for the lawyers and things, and so I just think that for a frivolous lawsuit to be filed and not followed up on, that maybe the county needs to go back after some of the actions like this so the next person don't file a frivolous lawsuit. So maybe the commission ought to think a little bit about that and see if we can recoup some of the money.
So we did have legal fees now on it. Part of that was legal fees.
It was 1,800.
Oh, 1,800.
Yeah,
Okay.
1,800.
Oh, mine
Okay.
was not
1,800.
1,800.
Okay, mistake, 1-0 off.
Okay.
I'm not,
Do you have anything else to discuss?
No, that was it.
That's not an agenda related item. It's nice that we have this freedom, I like that. It's always there, we got business to take care of.
You
Let's take care of it.
was the one that started, said get it on the agenda.
I'm good. So now we're gonna move on to, you don't have these type of problems down there, do you?
I'm gonna take like that, take a 5-minute break before we get into this.
Okay, so we do have 10 minutes. We'll take 7, how about 7? We'll
what's the
share.
difference?
Okay.
Minutes to do this.
The clock is ticking. Do you need
Locked
to
up.
have a copy of the motion or anything for the resolution because?
No,
No, I took notes on all that.
Anthony has, I was trying
I
to.
know, I meant
So
for
then
the
the insurance
administrator.
company's attorney.
Yes.
You will.
They file,
And
for us,
I would say
whenever
because
somebody's
of
files
some
against
very,
us, we gotta go out to our
Yeah, I would want to
Right.
have
Stuff like that, so.
and I
Okay.
scratched, because there were some people that came and I
Money
didn't
that
even
we
be here.
Yeah.
get back.
And they said,
How much
oh,
did the
because
county
I
have to
did
spend?
that. Well,
Nine,
no, I didn't
18,000.
have to.
No, 1,800.
Oh, 1,800.
900.
900. See, I would've got
Two
that
checks
wrong.
of 900,
Oh.
yes. 2 checks of 900, yes. And then that's just for the lawyers. Our employees have fees, that they spend too. Right. Or it gives you-
Nothing like organization. There we go.
Right.
I'm not. Oh, okay.
So,
Back in the session. Okay.
I don't want to hear for that.
But,
So few do.
My first husband's an attorney.
Is it really?
Yeah, and I asked him.
Is that why he's the first husband?
Yes.
Yeah.
A husband, I hate to say it, but, not only are attorneys paranoid, but they're also.
But I don't see a problem, except we all know, just like Hillsborough and Marion, there's a Marion Florence schism. There's still people in Florence that blame the entire downfall of Florence on the fact that Marion took over our school. And you can't convince them that it was the state that put us in Marion. So,
But you can tell.
but, so dividing Marion and putting half of it with Florence, I don't see it as an issue unless the commissioner that's elected for this area is like a solid Marion resident
Well, that
who
would be up
is
to
never
you.
gonna listen to anything about Florence or
Depends on who
Burns.
runs.
That's right, it depends on who you people
Yeah,
vote to
exactly.
put in there.
Exactly.
But, let's look at that. I don't think that allows them to even come close. If the Marion wants a Marion person, it's there, cause you don't have enough people to
Yeah.
be in the vote.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, you can look at the numbers and tell that, 960 or 966.
Well, you have that many voters, but you don't know which way they're gonna cast their vote.
I understand
Is
that,
it-
but that's what she's saying, though.
Is the 960, is that the population division or the registered voters
No, it's
division?
population.
Population.
Okay, because not all of them are registered voters.
Correct, correct.
And even with registered voters, voter turnout is low in our corner of the county.
Oh, yeah.
50% or something.
Yeah,
And Burns, a lot of people down there don't vote.
at all.
But you know,
might now.
so then they bring it on themselves, if they're not gonna go out and vote, then they bring it on themselves.
Right, right.
You know, which is sad,
Yeah.
it is sad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am a huge proponent of voting. All three of my kids are registered. Mike and I are registered since we moved there. I mean, it's your duty. And you can't complain if you don't
I don't
vote.
know if I have registered voters.
You're right.
But
I got registered voters, maybe. That's not census, that's extra.
I didn't give any registered voter numbers on these because that's not what we were looking at, because the statute says we go by population, so I
Yeah,
didn't give you.
population and geographics, that's what they was harping on.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't string them out.
I think this makes the most sense I've seen of the three proposals I've seen geographically. It's just nice that it also falls in line with the population. You know,
are you seeing anything out of the ordinary there, Brian? You're studying it
No.
all hard.
No, I was just kind of recalling the different renditions I had done.
Okay. When I tried to even get us closer in numbers by even 20 or 30 people, because some of these do have very, very low populations, and tried to take just one township and move it this way, or boy, that messes everything up. It's like,
the only other thing I can think of is there's gonna be a whole lot of people that say, well, Randy's been our
Yeah.
representative forever. We don't want a new one, you know, just because a lot of people are not comfortable with change.
and out the lake, that's one of my strong points is the lake.
Yeah.
I've heard that myself.
Yeah.
They voted me in I got a lot of votes in that area. But, what are you gonna do?
Right.
You're gonna hear something from somebody.
Or you just gonna have to go
Or I
solicit
wouldn't be
somewhere
happy.
else.
And I'm sure the same thing with Durham and things like that, and more from Mr. Becker in Hillsborough, you know, I'm sure he's hearing the same thing.
Yeah. We want you. You're who we elected. We don't want somebody new.
Right.
I still have the power center. No.
What'd you say?
Still, I retain the power center.
Yeah.
No, really.
So,
Are you bringing up a ugly comment there?
No, I don't. I don't laugh.
Kent, you'll still be my county commissioner, so. Well, you'll be most of the city staff
So,
county
Mr.
commissioner, because we all live on that side of town. We all live on Adams
What do you
Street, so.
say?
How's that happen?
I don't know.
I think we still need to wait till the 31st to do this, but it gives us some time now to get it out to the people and see if there's anybody upset about it.
So if, okay, so the 31st, we're not gonna be cutting it too short for a snowstorm or
You guys work every,
Monday?
meet every Monday. See, we do every other, and ours is the 14th and no, I'm sorry. The 17th and the 31st.
Oh.
No.
No, you just met Monday, Ken?
Yes.
Or,
So now you'll be on the 20th.
wait a minute.
You'll be
Wait,
on the
Yeah, I'm probably meeting the 24th, because it's
Mhm.
Well, our
Christmas.
resolution was
No.
dated the 31st, wasn't it?
No, we met,
That's our
You
last
met last,
day.
the 3rd?
Yeah.
Or
Yes,
I mean,
we
it's
met
probably
the
gonna be
3rd.
dated that day.
so we'll
or-
meet the 17th. I knew there was a 17 in there
Okay.
somewhere.
We need to get on the agenda for the 17th then.
Okay,
At 4:30 or 6:30?
6:30 now,
6:30.
which my husband hates because that means we don't eat until after the meeting.
So,
Yeah.
we're going to just, leave it, bring it to the people now?
I
Is that
approve
what
of that
we do?
idea because I'm a huge proponent of educate
Are we gonna-
your constituents. You know, listen to their points of view and,
It'd be
And if
nice if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I mean, it'd be nice to inform a community that you're representative for. Either you're not gonna be the representative, or hey, now you're gonna be your representative.
yeah.
And some people really like the idea that they have the opportunity, you know, to be one of the ones that get to pick another representative. I mean, some people do like that too, because there's those ways. But I was gonna say it'd be nice if somehow, I don't know, when I made copies, and you can see how the color just, two of these together, they don't blend very well. So you have to really study it. I don't know how we can make copies that the color would be better. Visually.
We can create something digitally and post it on the website, post it on
Brad, I
social
was
media.
asked about a petition to go against this now, since we voted the county administrator in, that the public may be more upset now, that they might not want to go to 5, due to knowing that administrator and this is gonna happen, so. Is that still?
You always have an issue of referendum.
Yeah.
Always. People can go out and circulate if they choose to.
But regardless of whether, I mean, they have to switch to a 5 until
Yeah,
the voting can
absolutely.
happen. Yeah. I mean, at this point, there's no way for a petition to happen and be voted on.
Before this could occur, you'd be undoing it in essence. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think, weren't you saying that there could be a petition against an administrator?
No,
Not against the administrator,
no,
just
that's,
against the
what I'm saying is the public has been voted on the 5 county thinking there was no administrator. And
Right.
now that you've got an administrator coming on, there'd be some people say, well, what do we need everybody for?
See, I'd have voted no on both of them.
Yeah.
I
Well,
had
and
the
there-
opportunity.
Now, in hindsight, now what do you say?
I'm adjusting to the idea of 5, but I am not adjusted at all to having an administrator
That's only
because.
because I didn't talk to you yet, and give you the benefits.
Well, there's
Well,
And all the
I'm a
facts.
believer, and I've been a city council member for 12 years, and I'm a believer that your department heads are the ones that know the most about what's going on in their department. And they're gonna come to you with their, for lack of a better word, pet peeves. An administrator is gonna pick and choose.
I don't agree with that.
I feel like they're
I
gonna
do have a
they're gonna
good
say, you know,
There's a man
Deidre
to
has
talk
just
to.
done nothing but complain.
I have worked
you know.
for both counties without county administrators and cities that do in
Yeah.
Hillsborough. As an employee, I love having the city administrator.
Really?
Yeah. No offense to these guys.
What do you think,
But
Tina?
they don't have the professional,
I don't have
the
an opinion.
professional
gonna say, I
ability to do that. Not that they're not smart people, but
Sure.
they've got lives
We're
outside of
challenged.
this room.
We're challenged.
Yeah.
And
I
the
mean,
I would say the
problem-
other word.
yeah.
And another thing to consider, we meet one day a week for a couple hours.
And an administrator is available
All the
all
time.
the open
And they
hours.
bring forth expertise in various fields,
Sure.
you know, that we don't have.
I'm not oblivious to the benefits. I'm just one who feels like the more steps there are in the chain of command, the more things tend to get lost. But that's my opinion.
If it was such a great idea, 90 more counties would be that way.
Yeah.
A lot of counties are going that way.
There's some, there's some.
They are.
Sure.
But the majority right now says no.
I think it's a millennial thing,
And it could be.
and we're all boomers. I mean, not all, but vast majority, you're not. But the vast majority of us are boomers.
What I would say is, most people, everything, even when we tried to go with the administrator last year, the only question everybody asked was, how much is it gonna cost? How much is it gonna cost?
Yeah.
How much is it gonna cost? And
Well, that should be one of your first questions.
I think the question actually is how much are we gonna save? Because we're gonna save a whole lot more money by having an administrator than we are by the cost of getting one. That's my opinion, from what I see and talk to other counties
Get the
with
right one.
yeah,
Yeah,
counties
and
with
I can see the
administrators.
benefit to that after sitting out there waiting to come in here, where you have your road and bridge guy and your, and Deidre and, whatever, each coming to you and taking up their amount of time because they want as much time as they can get to put their views forward. An administrator would sift through that and rank it in importance and put it, we'll go 15 minutes on this, but only 5 on this should take care of it. And I can see that. But I have a hard time with it. I have a hard time
I'll tell you what
with
I
it.
have a hard time with too, just one more point, and that is traveling around to the meetings and things that I do from one end of the state basically to another sometimes. The negativity that we get from this county because of all the friction and all the
Sure.
dissent and so on in this commission is really bad on our county.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of really being used as the example of this
Florence
is the way
has-
you don't do it.
Florence
Yeah.
has a teeny bit of statewide notoriety because of this whole water lease issue. Florence, 460 of us.
It doesn't help us, and it doesn't bring new families into our community, and
No.
it doesn't do
No.
anything. So,
No.
I think for civility,
And it
especially
alienates
some-
members that are already in your community
and
sometimes.
it's in our budget, so it's not that we're spending any more money,
Yeah,
it's in our budget.
Yeah.
So, I'm done with that.
okay.
So, I did ask that we get to talk to Jesse one more time. So, are you in a hurry? Are you in a hurry? Could we have 10 minutes with Jesse? Can you bring Jesse up here?
You guys might have been into it too.
Go right ahead.
Oh, I'm gonna try to.
If they had
swear.
forks, they'd be stabbing at you.
This is really good chocolate, I have to
Why don't you
say.
try some mystery, one that's wrapped up?
Yeah.
No.
Mysterious one.
Brad, you
They
usually-
don't
I
want to
think
cross
that you
contaminate.
Monday, do you plan on being